Welcome, everybody, to the I'm Not a GM Speed Chess Championship. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hess, alongside me, the one and only Grandmaster Amon Hamilton. Amon, you had the call for the first match. This is just our second. How are you feeling about the primetime matchup between Danny Rensch and Lawrence Trent?
Well, first of all, hello, Robert. Hello, everybody. It's good to be back for as you said, the second match here. I think Lawrence against Danny is a lot of people's closest matchup in the first round. I want to say because everyone knows about Lawrence, Danny, and they've been going back and forth on Twitter a little bit as well. So it feels like there's a little bit of heat behind this match. But I honestly had this matchup as one of the closest to expect from round one, Robert.
Absolutely, and they are the 7-10 matchup, if I'm not mistaken. But before we continue talking about the players, let's remind everyone of the format, because this is a single elimination knockout. They will have 75 minutes of the longer time, which will 5-minute plus 1 second increment, followed by 45 minutes of 3+1, and finally 25 minutes of bullet in 1+1. Of course, the winner making it to the quarterfinals. And the prizes, not bad, eh? Amon, seems like pretty good paydays for these players who really, it's pride at stake, but also some prizes.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about maybe just putting my GM title on hold and seeing if I could sneak in this tournament because those prizes don't look half bad, Robert.
Well, if only this tournament had begun a few years earlier, because you've cemented that GM title for a while now. But let's look at the bracket, because you mentioned this one as being the toss-up that everyone would be a bit conflicted about. And when I looked from top to bottom here, we know that Greg Shahade has made his way into the quarterfinals. What other matchups catch your eye here?
Well, first of all, the tournament has changed a little bit from the first edition, which is that it's not only IMs competing in this event. We have a lot of other streamers, personalities, and a lot of familiar names for a lot of the Twitch viewers here. I think a very underrated matchup, which will be insanely close, is actually right underneath that Greg matchup, Tanya Sakhdev against Kostya Kavutskiy. So I think that match is going to be very, very close. And we also have Eric Rosen against Sagar Shah. And to be quite honest, I don't know what to expect from Sagar. He's not someone that I've seen play in this format too much. And I think that might be just kind of a dark horse matchup to look out for.
For sure, because we don't know the bullet skills in particular. All these players are very strong, but if they're not well practiced online, that could be a problem. And one matchup that I'm really looking forward to is the one beneath this one, with Lars Oscar Haug taking on Alina Kashinskaya. Of course, Alina underseeded at number 14, considering she made her way to the finals last year, and she's looking not just to repeat that, but even win this whole thing.
Yeah, no, that is a criminally underseeded. I would say Alina is very, very dangerous in every format, which is what she demonstrated in the first edition.
For sure. And well, while we have been talking about some other matchups today, we do have Danny against Lawrence. So I'm pretty pumped for this one. It's Danny getting ready, playing a bit of bullet. In fact, winning this bullet game that I have on my computer in front of me. And Lawrence was playing bullet himself. So you think they're a little bit nervous here?
I think that they both seem to have the same idea that neither guy wants to weigh into this match a little light. They're looking to get the highest rating possible, even right up to the start of the game clock, to intimidate the opponent.
And even the big boss had to have that fair play cam going on, where they're on screen, right, of course, in front of them, so we can see their faces, but also their surroundings, to ensure that they are competing fairly. We know that they are, but it's just taking those precautionary measures just to uphold fair play. And well, the play hopefully is a bit better than fair. I think that we would like to see these players give their best, because Lawrence and Danny, they're not going to hold any punches. As you mentioned, Amon, on Twitter, they've been going at it. So what do you think we'll see over the board itself?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about Lawrence as a competitor is that I find him to be a very almost like a he plays chess like he plays poker. Maybe he's very emotional and driven by his emotions. So if he has a good game, he's going to ride that momentum into the next game. Whereas if he has a bad game, it might affect his next game in a negative way more than it might affect other players. So you live by the sword, die by the sword. But I think that's one of the things that really defines Lawrence as a player, that if he gets on a roll, if he's feeling himself, he's a showman. And we could really see, in any section, if he wins 1-2 games in a row, he's really going to stick it to Danny. So I think that the emotional side of things is really going to come into play. As for the bullet, as you mentioned, we saw both of these guys warming up with bullets. So maybe it speaks to the fact that that could be the defining segment of this match.
Yeah, I like what you said there about the emotions because speaking of emotions, Danny sometimes gets a little too attached to certain openings, as you know full well from beating me and Danny. You and Eric teamed up
Right.
in the Chess.com showdown where you all won, but sometimes he gets a little too attached to certain openings and certain ideas. So I know that he loves a good queen sacrifice. Sometimes it's an inopportune moment, and he'll need to rein that in because at his best, Danny can beat anybody in this field. And I really do believe that this match is a toss-up. I would actually give a slight nod to Danny as objectively as I possibly can be. I think that he's a little bit stronger, a little bit faster than Lawrence is these days.
Yeah, and I think one of the important characteristics that you do not want to have in a match like this is actually stubbornness. When you're playing an opening and it's not going your way, especially when you get down to the bullet, if you're playing something in 5 minutes, it's not working, 3 minutes, not working, it's definitely not going to work in bullet. It's going to get worse as the time gets lower. So you want to be able to adapt, have a few options ready that, hey, if something's not working out, you can play something else because I think that the stubbornness of certain players being, as you said, attached to a certain opening too much is actually their detriment.
I completely agree. And while we do have what will be a promising matchup ahead of us today, I want to remind everybody that we do have more action in the I'm Not a GM Speechless Championship. International Master Levy Rosman, better known as Gotham Chess throughout the Twitch sphere, taking on James Canty III. That is an IM versus NM National Master matchup. And Aman, just to do a quick little preview of that, of course, on paper, Levy is the heavy favorite. James, a very popular commentator and streamer in his own right. What are his chances like?
Yeah, well, obviously in this tournament, because it's changed a little bit and not everyone is an IM, you're going to have mismatches like, let's say, the match that I previously commentated between Alexandra and Greg Shahadi. Of course, Greg, the heavy favorite on paper going into that match, and that's why they had a handicap in place to make that more fair. Now, in this matchup, I don't think any handicap is necessary for an entertaining match, Robert, but I do think that if Canty is going to have his chances, I think it probably will need to come, as strange as it sounds, in the blitz portions. We know Levy to be just quite dangerous in bullet, and I don't see James stacking up to him in the bullet portions. So strange as it sounds, I think his chances are actually in the blitz, Robert.
Yeah, one of the things I like most about James is that his username is GM Canty, and he's striving to become the best title in chess. And I was looking up his ratings on Chess.com. His blitz rating in the 2500s, his bullet rating actually in the 2600s. But as you said, Levy, he's been known to play a great bullet game or two. His ratings are through the roof, and that's going to be a tough matchup for James. But before we even get to that matchup, we will have the Arena Kings Season 6 starting tomorrow. And Aman, you going to take part in this?
Yeah, this is exciting. Like, it's nice to have Arena Kings back. I think there is going to be more hype than ever for this season because there's more people streaming than ever for this season, and that's one of the requirements to win prizes in Arena Kings is you have to be streaming. And we know how many people have picked up streaming lately, and how many people have blown up in the streaming sphere. So it's going to be pretty exciting. I know that Eric and I are probably going to swap in, swap out for different editions of Arena Kings, but I'll definitely get some goes in. I think whoever is doing better in the season, we'll let them ride it out.
That makes sense. Well, I look forward to seeing you not just commentating alongside you, but against you in the Arena Kings. I definitely plan on taking part as well. And
Yep.
Aman, it's about that time, huh? We have just a couple minutes before the games begin. The players settling in there. It looks like Lawrence is laughing about something. Seems typical for him. I don't know. I mean, the 5 minute portion, it's a long segment there with 75 total minutes. They do get a break about halfway through. The players get a few minutes to relax. But I really feel like with two players who are quite emotional in nature, that whoever gets out to the hot start, that could be the person who leads from start to finish.
Yeah, as strange as it sounds, even the guy who wins game one is going to be at that emotional advantage that they're going to really be feeling good. I think that early on we're going to get that taste of what I mentioned about stubbornness. If there's an opening disaster in game one, are we going to see that corrected for the second time that these guys play white and black, the exact same colors, or are we going to see maybe just a repeat of a bad opening for one of these players? So I think it's really important early on to see how the opening phase goes for both players and whether or not either of these players needs to adapt early on.
And I think stylistically, the way these two players clash will be interesting because Danny, from the white side, he's an E4 player. And when people play E5, he often plays the Scotch line, which, as you know from experience, doesn't always end well for him. But Lawrence is more of a Sicilian player. So that's going to allow for more tactical battles. And I think that's to both sides' benefit. They both love aggressive play.
Yeah. And that just means that Danny has got his mug up to the up to the camera. I don't know what that was. Was that Lawrence on that mug or what? Danny, by the way, has got like some sort of like bike courier wristband on. Looks like he's about to deliver me like pizza or something.
That, or he's about to do some CrossFit while playing chess. So I think that while they're messing around, they're going to stop very soon because the game should start any second now.
Yeah, and we're being told that was actually Ryan Gosling on the mug. So that's like the weirdest thing I could have guessed would be on that mug.
But you also gave the biggest compliment to Lawrence Trent of his life. You just thought that Lawrence's face was Ryan Gosling's face, and who could be upset with that compliment?
Yeah, I don't know. I gave Lawrence Ryan Gosling when he looks a lot more like Slicker. From the UK as well.
That is very funny. And I see the game is just starting here. Danny with E4. Yep. Oh, no. I quit.
Oh man, Robert, this is not the best start for you, let's say.
Oh, well, I think that this is more of what is this variation by Lawrence? Because he put his knight on C6, which, as we know in the French, you often want to play C5 instead. He's just going for tricks.
Yeah, this looks like I don't know how to describe it, but it looks like one of those lines you might hustle a few games in the park with. This line definitely looks like something Lawrence has prepared and is sort of happy to get against Danny here.
Yeah, and I will say that right now Danny is left with a tough decision, which is why he hasn't moved. Whether to take that pawn en passant, he takes f6, which he could have played a move ago, or to leave it. He decides to leave it and say to Lawrence, I'm not afraid of what looks like a good central control for you because I'm able to counter later in the game, maybe with a c4 idea or to move this knight away from f3 and try to play f3 with a pawn. But actually, I don't mind Black's position somehow.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing about Black's position is you kind of have these knight a5 ideas, and if you could ever trade light squared bishops off, I mean, you're just laughing if you have Lawrence's position.
For sure. And that bishop on d3 will need to remain there, as Amon's pointing out, that knight would love to go a5 to c4, and potentially it does that even with the bishop still on d3, because that dark square bishop, which we often think of as an advantage, it's not doing much of anything and doesn't have any targets to apply pressure on.
Yeah, and if you go for some plan like knight e1, f3, I mean, Black doesn't really care. Sure, he takes the bishop on d2, but the knight on e1 is not going to be in a great position after you play f3 and take away its square to return to the game. Meanwhile, Black has a couple moves in between. He's got the knight a5 plan and maybe try to trade light square bishops. So I really don't mind Lawrence's position right out of the gate. And let's not forget about the time advantage, Robert, as Danny he's kind of in a new position.
He really is. And, as I reflect already, it's only moved 10. But as I think back of the opening, maybe taking en passant was better because White would have had free flow with the pieces, although so would Black's pieces, right? Because had the pawn go away from the F file and the E5 pawn, Black has the semi-open F file, things of that nature. So I think that Danny is reflecting on that himself while trying to continue this game. And that is dangerous territory because, as we both know from experience, when you're playing a game but reflecting on the past moves, you're distracting yourself from being as objective as possible about the current situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. You brought that up before the match that Danny sometimes, holds on to thoughts for too long and really just needs to say, okay, the decision's done. Let's continue. If he wants to change that decision, well, that's why he can repeat this opening, and there's an easy way to deviate from this game in case he wants to repeat this line.
For sure. And he is down quite a lot on the clock. Lawrence,
this is a slow-paced game right now, Robert.
Yeah, and it's hard because you start with 5 minutes, and most of us, when we play blitz, we're playing 3 minutes. You and I, when we're going at it, 3-minute chess. So then you think, I'm in a comfort zone where I have a couple more minutes to spend, and then you start spending it too early, and your opponent builds up a big lead. It is a 2-minute time advantage for Lawrence, and I kind of like his position right now. So not a good start for Danny.
No, I wouldn't say so. And right now, Danny is kind of in the middle of two plans. He wishes maybe his bishop was on e1 so that the knight didn't have anything to capture, and f3 might look towards kicking that knight out for real. But right now, after f3, I mean, Lawrence is just going to take that bishop on d2, queen takes, and maybe he's going to go either bishop d7 or b6 and just get that light square bishop out.
I'm with you. And that d3 square is one that white would like to share with the bishop and the knight, because black's idea is to play c5. But if white's knight were on d3, then you take away that option, or at least make it more difficult to play. And he plays bishop e2, perhaps for this purpose. But I don't know, black can just play c5 here. And even then, it's like you're getting exactly what you want out of a French.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this looks, and also the other thing is if you go b6 and white ever goes knight d3, it might be nice in some cases to play bishop a6. I can't tell, just so you always have that trade in your back pocket.
Wow, and Lawrence wants more. He's saying, no, I'm pushing my pawns forward because knight d3 comes with the tempo on that f4 pawn, but he might just play g5. And one of these positions, Amon, you can tell me, it feels like it's too risky in my opinion, but then sometimes it's justified for black.
Yeah, I think that the way I would view it is that the position looked honestly good enough that I wouldn't bother going for this. But it's not to say that this is not a very valid way to play. So it's just more in Lawrence's style. And, for that reason, I think it's probably better that he plays this way. He's, as you said, an aggressive attacking player. He's got that F pawn up there. He wants to maybe have the queen join the party on H4 or on G5. And, if he ever gets that queen G5 sort of knight H4 with F3 ideas, if they start kicking around there, this could be very good. But on the other hand, Danny gets to execute the one plan that I mentioned earlier, bishop E1, and now F3 for white is something to think about.
It's funny because both of our plans somehow happened. The
I
bishop
don't know
went
how.
to E1, the knight went to D3, and the bishop went to E2. So both of our plans have come to fruition here. And I like white's position because his pawn F4, look at this. He's already targeting it. He can put more pressure with queen to C1 if he wants, but I wouldn't just focus all my energy there because black is going to play queen G5 or queen H4, as you mentioned. So playing queen C1 feels like, so it's one trick. I'm going after your F4 pawn, easy to defend. Instead, Danny brings his knight around. And is that knight coming to H3?
I think he just wanted the bishop on D3. And the interesting thing about this position is I feel like if it gets into a maneuvering game, that I sort of prefer white. I think that white's pieces have more room to improve in this position, like kind of higher ceilings. They honestly, it's been bishop, bishop, knight that have been dancing around about 5 squares for the last 7 moves. So I think Danny's pieces can only get better.
And I think one way to improve your pieces is to take this pawn on c5, which may seem counterintuitive because the e5 pawn drops. But when you start removing pawns from the position, you free up the remaining squares. And here, I think that Lawrence can play c4 to trap that bishop, to force it to capture an f5. And as you were saying, white's pieces can improve, but now I'm not really seeing exactly how. And that cemented double pawns on the c file, those in the long run are not going to be favorable pawns for.
Yeah. And I also was thinking about c takes d4, just because if Danny would have to trade on f5 there, then you sort of get that open c file. And in this position, at least, I don't think Danny is too unhappy in the sense that there's no open c file, there's no targets for black. He's got this a pawn to look at. Danny's got the f4 pawn. It looks fairly balanced here. And as we know, we have opposite bishops, which does speak to a bit more of a balanced game, but perhaps a few more kingside opportunities here for Lawrence.
Yeah, and one of the things about these opposite color bishops is if white plays a5, black can play b5 and keep that queen side closed. Thanks to this bishop on d7, white does not have a piece that can go attack a light square on the queen side. So I think that Lawrence is relying on that. Danny's just saying, what do I have to do here? I don't really need to move, right? My position is very solid.
He doesn't need to move, but he has less time. So in fact, he does need to move. That's the issue, is when you've sort of got these closed positions or there's not much going on, time, like the fact that you're up on time becomes so much more important.
That's very true. And I meant that more so in a positional point of view, but you're right to look at the clock because Danny is down a minute. But what is black's idea? I'm not quite sure. What is white's idea? I'm also not sure. I see both sides sort of shuffling around. And then that's where the time trouble really makes its mark. Because look, Danny put that pawn on a5, not on a6. But in the long run, that pawn could be a target and it's on a light square. So black can try to attack it.
So I think Lawrence wants to put his rook on f8, which frees up either his queen or his other rook. And then maybe rook h5 takes h3 is definitely a sacrifice that I'm looking at immediately. Knight h4 and queen g6 happens. And I think Danny is really at risk right now of just getting mated, like just getting obliterated on the king side. If he goes for something like queen c5 or queen d6, I can see rook f8 and like bishop e8 happening. And as we see rook h5, I think this could get really scary for Danny here.
Although a cool line is queen e6, if rook b6, maybe you could sack your queen on b6 and push that a pawn forward. I haven't calculated it all, but that is a thematic queen sack to have a free pawn to promote. And so that's why Lawrence says, I don't want to deal with any of that. Let me bring my rook to f8. And now knight h4. I'm with you, Alon. This is looking very easy for black to play.
Yeah, and as soon as that bishop gets defended on d7, queen g6 hits c2, which is strangely enough, it's actually a very important pawn. And even just like, okay, knight g4 played, but I think we're going to see some kind of breakthrough eventually.
Like rook g5, pawn h5, and I'm not really sure how Danny intends to meet that. It seems very straightforward.
Yeah, I have no idea. Because even rook takes g4 and f3, I'm sure it breaks through. These rooks are just not helping the queen side. They're not helping the king side either.
No. And I guess Danny's trying to rely, and look at that move, knight f5, very smart move by Lawrence, because knight takes g2 was the move that I was first calculating. But I guess what Lawrence wanted to avoid was white pushing the pawn to h3 and getting a pawn to g4 and keeping the position closed. Here you can't do that because your knight's under attack and you just lose a full piece.
This is, you guys can see the eval bar shimmying right down the board there, which is because there's no material imbalance. He's about to win a piece, but up till now, it's about -3, -4, and he hasn't taken anything.
Yeah, that's when you know you're in a tough spot, when the position is even in terms of material, but just completely hopeless in terms of the game itself. And well, I wonder if Danny is going to sacrifice this knight. Yeah, he is.
So, yeah.
And that's a good idea considering the time situation and considering the board state. Like, even though black's up a piece, what next is the real question.
The H file is definitely like rook h6 and g5 and rook down is definitely an idea. Bishop g5 is tricky though, and Danny's looking to weasel his way in there.
Oh, that was a good try, but that's why Lawrence played g6, because both of his rooks covered the a7 square. So a nice last-ditch effort.
And the funny thing about bishop b6 is you could also just kind of sit there and laugh at it because it isn't threatening anything anyway. But as you mentioned, Lawrence did have that covered laterally, which is something that paid off for him in the end.
For sure. And, well, a one-game lead for Lawrence. I wonder if we will see that French again. It looks a bit iffy to me, but Lawrence clearly prepared it and moved very quickly in the opening. And look at this. I mean, these guys are holding back nothing right now.
Yeah, I mean, how quick, like, what's more impressive than how quickly he played g4 was how quickly Danny responded, as if this is something that he sees all the time.
Right? It's just like, oh, he's throwing his kingside pawn at me. No big deal. I'll play in the center. That is, though, strategically how we advise people to handle things like that. If someone's attacking on the flank, you don't necessarily need to turtle up and defend on the flank. You can actually strike back in the center, and that counterattack is a form of defense.
So the first thing that I'm thinking is e4 here, and I'm like, why is this not good? If I can cement this pawn in any way and force white to play either like d3 or f3, I'm feeling great right now. The knight seems like come to e5. It's like, this feels devastating already.
Right? Because knight e5 now, especially after knight e2, it's like a self-made. Look at Lawrence's face.
Because knight d4 covers both squares, but just c5.
Right. And Lawrence had his head in his hands, just devastated about how bad his position is on move 9 with the white pieces.
This is the worst opening I've seen in a good minute.
Yeah, and it's not quite over yet. I think that he has to play bishop g2, and even if knight d3 check, put his king on f1, and you hope that you can survive. But as long as there's no immediate checkmate, the game isn't concluded, at least not at this point.
Yeah, I think the issue is that after queen f6 in that position, you're gonna have to play knight f4 basically.
Yeah. I don't envy this position, but Lawrence, he put his head in his hands. He was upset. He needs to
Yep.
calm himself down because there is still plenty of game left, especially in a blitz game. I know 4.5 minutes may seem like an eternity, especially to those of us who play hyper bullet all the time, but
Yep.
that's not that much time to figure out the complications.
Yeah, and we talked about, like emotional turbulence and how that might play in. I think Lawrence was really feeling himself after that last one. He shoves that the G pawn up the board, ready to get Danny in another tricky opening, and all of a sudden he's like, wait, I gotta maybe rein it in a little bit. You can't play, crazy wing attacks in every game and have them work.
As somebody who plays some of the most suspicious openings ever, I know how it feels to play something that's offbeat and then you're still down a lot of time because it backfires. And that's exactly
Yeah.
what's happening here. But to Lawrence's credit, he went knight f4. He's about even on time. That e4 pawn, while it is a strength, if you say play queen takes f4, white just plays d3, opening that bishop on c1 or even d4 to a discovered attack on that queen. So the f4 pawn remains. White's king feels safer than it did just a couple moves ago. Black, I still would prefer to play from Danny's side of this position, but there's plenty of life left and you have a lot to prove.
Yeah, once this bishop gets out, I'm thinking f5 and the rooks come into the middle. The tough thing about this position for Lawrence is that Danny's moves are not complicated. He can bring the bishop out to the most logical square, just put a rook on d8, and he's not going to be doing anything wrong.
You're totally right. And well, it is not complicated. It seems like very straightforward moves, but you don't want to burn clock playing those type of moves. And that's the thing about blitz. You have to weigh playing quickly versus perfection. And I think for most players, like, well, I want to play the best moves possible every single turn. Oftentimes, the move that are coming to these very strong players quickly they're often the best moves. So bishop f5 is a move Danny could have played in 4 seconds. Instead, he played it in 34 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah, and if that pattern keeps up for other moves of similar ease, then all of a sudden Danny has like a minute and a couple more simple moves. So I think he's really going to look to, well, actually he could even trade here, and I don't think he'd be upset. I think Queen e6 looks like the more maybe the nastier move. Yeah. But even trading, I think the end game is just crushing for Black as well.
Totally with you. And this is what Danny now needs to calculate is there some kind of queen takes g7 check, or does white have to spend a move with the bishop first? Queen takes g7 will not work, though sometimes it might. Here it will not. But that's what Danny is now calculating. Can I just move my king over with king h8? The answer seems to be a clear yes. But then there's bishop takes e4 as a possibility. So the tactics are really becoming a part of this position. And now Danny is going to spend more time, despite the fact that he has a much better position. I could see this turning because of the complications.
Yeah, and the nice thing to keep in mind for Black is that if this pawn ever disappears and you're not getting mated, you're actually really happy to see that. You throw in like a bishop h3 check, followed by queen c4 check, operate on the e-file with a rook, and suddenly the white king is like, hey, we're supposed to leave that pawn there, guys. That's just part of the shelter.
Completely agreed. So that makes king h8 even more likely of a move because bishop takes e4, as Aman was saying, bishop h3 check is a possibility. But look at this. Bishop g6 played after about a minute think. Still a very good move, clogging the g file. But it's one of these moves where, like, is Danny going to go on the defensive now, or is he just fending off the initial attack and then countering himself?
Yeah, because all you need is to buy just that little bit of time. And after f5, I think Lawrence is just hoping to go to an endgame, although I don't think his chances are too much better in an endgame here. Like queen takes f5, I think that looks just fine.
Now, I'm wondering about bishop takes f5 because the only response to bishop takes f5 I see is bishop takes e4. But I'm taking your advice of, hey, actually, I want that pawn off the board, so go ahead and take it.
Yeah, the thing is, bishop takes f5 is such a hard move to make because you just played bishop g6.
Right.
So to go back and play the exact same position where it's your opponent's turn is like, no, not for me.
I'm with you. It's much easier to sit as a commentator and suggest that move because I don't have to deal with the repercussion of the attack. But Danny says, hey, Aman is just being very logical here. Let's go to this end game. And it's not quite a pure end game because still many pieces on the board, but look at white's bishop on c1. That's hardly a bishop. That's a big pawn sitting there, can't get out. The d pawn is backwards. Would love to play a move like d4, but you just lose a pawn on the spot with en passant. So yeah, this is no good.
Danny's got a good handle on this position, but one thing about bishop g6, which does allow, is a4. And previously there was always bishop d7 to hit the rook hit that A pawn, and just always be a general nuisance on the light squares. So A4, A5 is exactly what Lawrence needs to at least have a target on the queen side and say, look, Danny, you might be winning this game, but at least there's something you always have to keep your eye on.
Totally good point. And I like how Danny responds instantly with rook to d6, saying, I'm never going to take you on a5 because while that shatters my pawn structure, it also gives his bishop on c1 a new lease on life. That bishop, if it goes to a3 now, it attacks nothing. The pawn on c5 is defended by this pawn chain. So that is what Danny is doing. He's keeping that bishop on c1 entombed by the rest of the pawn structure. And so Lawrence is just making moves at this point. But now, okay, h5, that's a risky move because at some point, perhaps rook g5 will come in. For now, rook g5 is my bishop f6. So it seems that Danny has everything covered, but you are creating some more weaknesses.
Yeah, if this bishop stays on c1 the whole game, I mean, let's be clear, it's going to be a loss for Lawrence because the pawns on the queen side keep it locked out. The bishop a3 diagonal doesn't go anywhere, and that pawn on e4. You and I were talking about that move. What was it, like move 6 or 7, like ages ago? We're like, oh, that looks like a good one, and now it's actually keeping white completely locked down here in quarantine, if you will.
For sure. There's really very little that white can do here besides shuffle. So that begs the question, what is black going to do to win this game? Because the position looks great. It is great. But how do we actually end this game decisively?
I'm looking at bishop f4 as a nice move to control g5, hit d2, just kind of get on a nicer square. Bishop f6 hits the h4 pawn, but I like bishop f4 for some reason. Just hitting that d2 pawn and taking control of some squares there.
The one thing about bishop f4 is white gets this d4 type of move, as now en passant is met by the hanging bishop on f4. So even though white has to give up a pawn in those sequences, maybe that's worth it to at least trade off your worst piece. And that's an interesting note, I think, for our audience is that is the material more important or is it the quality of our pieces?
Yep. And the quality of white's pieces has certainly been in question for the majority of this game. Bishop takes c3 is, let's say it's on the cards, but it looks like Lawrence, is some bishop h5 move he wants to throw in? No, it doesn't work.
Yeah, just a free pawn.
Just a pawn, yeah.
And Danny takes it. He has 45 seconds, plenty of time left on his clock. Actually, he's really played a nice game, keeping Lawrence stuck in the box and then taking material when it was offered to him. And Lawrence, I don't think, saw that coming. He's clearly been frustrated with his position, and Danny should be able to even the score as this game nears its conclusion.
Yep. Yeah, I don't see a good way to continue here. Maybe he's going to go rook b7 or rook a6 to try to prevent black from taking on d2.
He goes king f1, so bishop d2, there's bishop b2 check, and suddenly that king on f6 isn't quite so safe. It's checkmate.
Yeah. That's a funny mate if you move the king. Rook takes g6, as Robert's pointing out, and king has nowhere to go. Bishop back to e5. Are we going to see d4?
We're going to see d4. Mate.
Uh-oh. It's another mate on e7.
Oh, no. d4 is a very good move. He plays d3. So
what?
It's one of those moves where obviously your plan is bishop to g5 check, but he chose the less forcing option, and d3 clearly was not the right move, and we can see with the evaluation bar going back down in black's favor because look at Danny. He shuts that bishop down from c1. That's what he's been going against the entire game, and now the d pawn can't move because the bishop on d1 is hanging behind it.
No, great point. And now I'm really concerned for Lawrence's position after just rook d3 and rook d1.
Yeah, rook d1 just scoops off two bishops for the rook, and there might actually be a checkmate, right? If the king goes to g2, pawn f3 would be a checkmate, so he goes to e2 instead. Nice game.
Yeah, this has been a really nice game from Danny here, and if king d2, there was bishop f4 check, which is why he's gone to e3.
It was bishop f4 checkmate, actually. So many weird mates in this game.
Yeah. Oh man, these bishops are gonna wreak havoc here. Rook b2. Danny, I think, has got this game under control.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about his ability to win this one. The bishop on d4, I think you can call that a great piece.
We'll go with great for now.
And now the pawns just roll, and that's that.
Bishops cover way too many squares here, and just a great game. The funny thing about the final position is you don't even have stalemate tricks because you have the d1 square.
Yeah, it's checkmate in one threaten, and the king's just locked in. But as you said, that's very important to point out, though, because it's easy to think, oh, I'll just push my pawn, go for checkmate, and then you don't realize your pawn just sacrifices the rooks and makes a stalemate, but wasn't available there. And hey, we have this French again.
Yeah, I think already we've seen the first adaptation as Danny has gone for a quicker e5 than last time. So he didn't let the knight get to f6 first. Instead, he played e5 preemptively, and it was met with f6 by Lawrence.
And he puts his queen center. I see the evaluation bar went down in black's favor, which means that knight takes d4 and then e5 is the tactic here. And I would not have seen that immediately myself, but when I see the evaluation bar going down, there must be some tactic. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that black would be so favored here.
Yeah, and knight takes e5, queen takes e5 is just met by rook e8, which backs up Robert's tactic there. And it's just one of those situations where you're trying to do a little too much in the opening, developing the queen when you got that tender pawn. And the way that black's opening works with that knight c6 is they generally don't go for c5. The moves for black are usually revolving around some sort of e5 break. So tactically, black should be on the lookout for tactics revolving around the e5 break in general a little bit more than c5. So that was an option there for Lawrence. He doesn't see it, plays queen d6. He wants to play e5 a little bit more organically, it looks like.
And it's impossible to blame somebody for not finding that. And I'm serious. The only reason I saw it was I quickly looked and I saw that the evaluation bar plummeted. And I was like, okay, that means there's a tactic. And it's such a simple position. We were on move 8. So what else could there be besides a knight sacrifice just to break open the position? So I can't fault either of the players for overlooking that. That's one of the things where once you realize it's possible, you're like, oh, okay, never again. But to even think about it as being a possibility is something that you really have to train yourself to master.
Absolutely. And we've seen a6. So Lawrence has actually taken a much slower approach than the eval bar would like him to. But also bishop d7, bishop e8, bishop h5, as long as that might take, is a very common maneuver. You might look at the e5 break and say, well, that's not happening. What am I going to do with this light squared bishop? That's usually the maneuver, either to put it on g6 or more commonly h5, where it's going to pin that knight, and then the d4 pawn really becomes tender.
Completely agreed. And speaking of tender d4 pawn, now the bishop's on a5. At some point, you have to watch out for bishop to b6, putting another attacker right there in the center. And I like your idea of bishop d7 first. I don't think you have to rush this bishop to b6 decision because that will later invite knight a4 type of stuff. So I would play bishop d7. You can either put your rook or your bishop on e8, depending on how white responds. And I think that Lawrence, considering the state of this position, he should be perfectly happy.
Yeah, and bishop d7, even if you don't go for bishop e8, bishop h5, I think the bishop just needs to go there anyway. You're not going to play b6 in this position with your bishop on a5. b5 doesn't look any better. So I think your bishop just needs to go to d7, if not just to connect the rooks.
And he plays bishop to b6. He does the immediate pressure on the d4 pawn. And I guess white's only move to defend is bishop e3 at this point. Not exactly the move you want to play because the semi-open e-file was yours for the taking. Now you're blocking your own queen's access along the line. Yeah,
and now I guess bishop d7 makes sense as well. I think white's going to get, the rooks look pretty good on sort of e1, d1, but I think bishop e8, bishop h5 is something to really worry about, or something that you need an answer to simply.
He goes knight g4 because instead of the slower, which I liked your plan a lot with bishop d7 e8, he says rook takes f3 is a big threat, trying to checkmate you over there on h2. And it's not just the sacrifice and exchange. There's also d4 pawn hanging because the knight is really needed on f3 to defend the king side. So by process of elimination, I would say g3 is the move that white has to play, in which case your eventual bishop getting involved in light squares is going to be even more powerful as g3 makes the remaining light squares weaker.
Yep. No, that's well said. g3, basically, if you go h3, if Lawrence wanted to, he could still sack on f3. White would take on g4, and then he'd probably just bring the rook back somewhere and say, okay, your d pawn is weaker as a result, and I'm not so sure that pawn on g4 is going to be a good thing.
Exactly, because that semi-open h-file would be good if white had a rook there, but when the king's over there, that could cause some problems. And as you point out, the d4 pawn remains a target for Lawrence to pile up on. So, I mean, g3 is really not a move you want to play here for white. So I could understand why Danny would go h3 just to avoid weakening the light squares, but it does come at the cost of that d4 pawn becoming pretty
And what
permanent.
about bishop takes h7? Like, because he's spending time, that has to be the move he's considering here, other than pawn moves in front of the king.
Wow, bishop h7. The point is that if king takes h7, knight g5 check, you win that knight back on g4. I kind of like that. I mean, I really didn't put much stock into it at first. I wasn't thinking along those lines, but that's on me. That's me overlooking a tactic that could be good. He does it.
So king h8 is definitely what I was going to say.
Whoa.
Regardless of what happens, I think that's the move he was going to play. But I think maybe we needed a more energetic response from Lawrence, like taking that bishop, allowing queen g4, and just trying like e5, queen h5, bishop f5, something like that.
I'm with you. That's like in the style of the French, where you get that bishop out, you feel good about your position. Here, queen h5 probably just lands checkmate in a couple moves because your king's stuck in the corner here. Ooh,
Yep.
This is bad.
Knight f7, and then after check, you have bishop takes h6 if he tries to sneak that knight into block. I think Danny is going to get Lawrence here. I'm trying to find like the best way to continue playing here, and I'm kind of struggling.
Because there's checkmate on e8 as well, right? Like if rook f6, you play bishop g6 check, and then just check on h7 with your queen, check on h8 with your queen, and then mate on e8 in the end. I know it's may be hard to visualize for some of our audience, but it's a very forcing sequence. So Lawrence, yeah, he's pretty much out of options here.
And that's a pretty funny kind of checkmate. Black has, 6, 7 pieces around the king, and White's queen is just waltzing in like she owns the place.
Yeah, that's never fun when you have that, especially when you're up more material than Lawrence is currently up, because he's up a piece right now for 1 pawn, and normally you're up like 3 pieces, and you're like, oh, I'm winning. Oh, this is happening.
Yeah, well, if anyone had trouble visualizing, hopefully Danny is going to be able to show you exactly what Robert meant.
Yep, this is the exact checkmate, and he's going to allow it.
Yeah.
See, that's how you know Danny and I, unfortunately, have becoming more in sync with one another. Well, actually, maybe this is fortunate for him and unfortunate for me, where he is now finding these direct checkmates, and he's doing as I said. And the match actually has come to a pause because in the I'm Not a GM Speeches Championship, there is a break for the players midway through the time segments. So with that in mind, do you have any final thoughts on the first 3 games that we've seen here before we had a break?
Well, what we've seen, because we've only seen 3 games, we've only seen the white pieces for Danny twice. So Lawrence hasn't had his second game with white. And what we've seen is the French every time. And what I'm seeing from these positions so far is that I'm actually liking them for Lawrence, the way that they're trending. I think that he has a lot of opportunities that he can capitalize on in general. We haven't necessarily seen them. Danny played a good game this time. But he did give up some tactical shots on the way. In a break, I can see Lawrence taking a look at these games and being like, well, I'm going to keep playing this opening. I'm not unhappy with the evals, the positions that I'm getting against Danny. I mean, if you're getting these types of positions with the French, Robert, I think you have to keep playing it the way the match is going so far.
I'm with you. It felt like the first 2 games, the results were fair. Both players dominated the games they won. And then this third game was more of a toss-up where Danny uncorked a tactic because Lawrence himself was the one who went for adventurous opportunities. So with that, we'll take a quick break. We will return with more from this I'm Not a GM Speed Chess Championship brought to you by Chess.com. And we return with more action from the I'm Not a GM Speeches Championship. Amon, Danny Rensch, the beloved Chess.com chief chess officer, commentator, just personality extraordinaire. He is out to a 2-1 lead over Lawrence Trent himself, a very famous, well-known commentator. So Danny has to feel happy thus far, but you and I were talking during the break. For Lawrence, you don't think he should be too upset about his play either.
No, I mean, let's first give credit where credit's due. Not only did Danny win the most recent game before the break, but he also had what I would say is maybe the most dominating game that we've seen so far in the match, which was game two, with those two bishops and the way he just punished Lawrence's maybe over aggressive opening with the white pieces. So we're interested to see what Lawrence comes up with the white pieces. We know he's going to adjust. He's not going to repeat that line exactly. But yeah, and if you're in Lawrence's camp, I don't think you're too unhappy. The score's 2-1. You're only down a game. You haven't even had the white pieces twice yet. And I think that both games with the French, although he's 1-1 with it, I think he can be happy with the positions he's getting. And if he uses that break, even to just check a few computer evaluations or maybe review his lines there, I think he'll be happy with what he finds.
Yeah, I'm with you there, partner. And I do think that game two was one where Lawrence is not going to be repeating that G4, G5 is sort of, I'm hyper aggressive, but it backfires in two moves because Danny put his pawn on E4, his knight on E5, and everything started looking terrible for Lawrence, who had the white pieces in that game. So I think we'll see something different from him, maybe something more initially solid before storming for an attack. But hey, we have liftoff, and C4 once again is played.
Yep. So I think he's generally okay with G4, but he's really, I mean, he's checked this. Let's be clear. This has to be different than last time. And there we go. He's got D3. He's checked it, and he says, "Look, this is still playable. I trust myself here." What do you make? What's your initial take on D3? You know, he's clearly prepped this in the break. Is this something that you're feeling confident about?
Well, Lawrence must have played this before. And the reason I say that is because Danny is coming out and playing really quickly in response to this obscure opening. So he must have seen Lawrence's database of games, said, this is something he might play against me. And thus I feel ready to handle it. But it's just such a weird dynamic where it feels like black is the one who has all of the immediate pressure. Look at this pawn in D3. You can't play bishop G2 like you want to because then you drop the D3 pawn immediately. So I have this feeling that this should be pretty good for black from both an objective point of view, but also just a strategic point of view. It seems easier to my eyes for black to play.
Yep. I'm with you there because, well, we might even see just like Queen D7 or something from black. I'm not sure how scary Queen B7 is supposed to be, and we do see Queen D7. If white can sort of sneak in a bunch of moves in a row, like if he gets his knight to G3 and then plays bishop E2, I could believe some light square control with H4, H5 coming, and bishop on G6. But as we see, he's got to play rook D1. He's got to defend his pawn on D3 before he can do that stuff. It just feels like if you can get everything you want, it's a nice structure, but I can't see that happening in an easy way here.
Yeah, I think that you would ideally be able to capture this pawn on b7. You can't do that because rook b8 is a very straightforward response, winning the bishop behind the queen on b2. That's why Lawrence said went rook to d1. And yeah, he has the d3 pawn defended for the moment. And one of the big questions that Danny is trying to ponder here is, should he castle queenside? That gets the king out of the center, connects the rooks, but perhaps on the queen side, the king is in danger. But I think on the king side, it's also going to be in danger. So he says, hey, let's do this.
Yep, he castles long. It adds even more pressure immediately to that d pawn. Now, I don't know if it's actually something that can be captured, but at least it needs consideration. And Lawrence gives it about 2 seconds of consideration and says, "You can't take it, and if you really want to, you can calculate it."
Well, I think one of the big problems is if you are going to take this pawn on d3, you need to have the move e5 to e4 as a follow-up to defend the bishop on that square. But e4 is not a possibility with the bishop hanging on g7 behind the pawn. So that's why Danny does not take it. He instead plays bishop to g4, which threatens bishop f3, for example. Not only does it pin the knight, but you can plant the bishop there, kick the rook out of the corner. So I mentioned how black's king might not be safe, but Aman, is white's king really going to be any safer here?
Yeah, it's well, at this point, I think it's fair to say that white's not planning on castling. Now, he could, of course, go some sort of bishop g2 thing, but yeah, rook g1 feels much more natural. He's using one rook to defend d3, the other rook to operate on the g file, and he's saying, look, although there's an open d file here, otherwise the position it's not too open. Like the king doesn't have diagonals to worry about. This a5, e1, can't see black taking advantage of that. So actually bishop takes e2, king takes e2. If that were to happen, I think Lawrence's king is just fine in the center of the board.
Completely agreed. And one thing that white needs to figure out, because there's a bishop on g2, a queen on b3, you want to kick that knight out of c6. And one way that you would try to do that is playing d4, but not with that king on e1. Absolutely not, right? d4 would be way too risky, blowing open the center when your king is on e1. Bishop takes e2, for instance. So I think that Lawrence is going to need to figure out a way to actually increase his attack. But as you're pointing out, his king seems all right here on e1.
Yeah, and if Danny basically gets the move f4 in, even if it loses a pawn or something, we know at this moment that Lawrence's king is not going to the left or the right. It's stuck in the middle. So I think if you just open the position, generally speaking, definitely a good thing for Danny.
For sure. And he brings that rook to e8, saying f4 becomes even more powerful. You're certainly not taking f4 in that situation because the rook opens up. But the downside of playing f4 is that the e4 square becomes white's for the taking. And while the initial concrete attack is more valuable to black, in the long run, if you can fend off the attack, then put a bishop or a knight eventually on e4, that would be good news for Lawrence.
Yeah, and we see f3, which is definitely not my first take on the position, but you sort of see what he wants to do. He wants to free the knight on e2 to move, if necessary, like knight c3. He goes bishop c3 to follow up. So at some point, he might just go like e4, solidify like that bishop on d5, and try to play that position. I'm trying to see what other intentions he might have with f3.
I guess he wants to get rook b1 in, and if the pawn were down in f3 right now, you put that pawn back in f2, there could be some kind of bishop takes e2 and knight d4 check. I know that may be difficult for our audience, but that was one of the ideas potentially, though the knight can't really move. I mentioned this earlier. The knight is pretty stuck on c6, so I don't think that would have worked, and now the e3 pawn is a target. So I actually like how this is turning for Danny.
Yeah, and in response to rook b1, I think just b6 is all, like, is that all that that black has to guard that pawn? Because if so, I feel like I would be throwing rook b1 in.
Yeah, b6 a really scary move to have to play, but you're right. That's what the response would have been, and I'm with you because now the king's in f2. You still have rook to b1 as an option, but I don't really like the look of this king sitting on f2. For example, f4 and maybe queen h3 at some point can be really scary for this king on f2.
Yeah, and I'm wondering why, like, okay, so how does black meet rook b1 in a good way? I see the eval bar definitely favoring black, and it looks like one of those positions that should favor him. But after rook b1, like b6, queen a4, like I start to get pretty concerned with black's position.
And that's exactly why Danny went bishop f7, saying, well, now if you play rook b1, I will play b6, but you don't have time to use Amon's plan of queen to b5, queen a4, and get in on those light squares because a bishop trade is being offered on d5. So I'm with you, Amon. It felt like this was just a move too slow for Lawrence to pry open the queen side.
Yeah, because bishop h6, I mean, although it threatens e3, that's not a check. So you could play rook b1 and then king f2, or and then queen a4 and then king f2. There's a lot of maybe in between moves that could have been thrown in there.
And you always want to think about the weaknesses you may create, or what kind of tempo you may gain. And here, I think white should play e4 himself and say, let me keep that bishop on d5. You mentioned that idea. The thing I don't really love about it is once, say, this pawn moves away from f5, that queen can jump into h3, and that's just king on f2. That king is not happy to be there.
Yep. And if you take with the f pawn ever, you're just asking for it. Not only is the e3 square guarded by h3, as well, the f file is just opened up on your king. So very, very scary, actually. And I know this is kind of weird, but after e4, I'm also a little concerned about, strangely, the move like bishop f8 and like maybe coming to c5.
That's another good point, because maybe you can even clog the b file with the bishop if white allows it, and just to safeguard this king on c8. So multiple options here for Danny. He is a little bit ahead on the clock, but I think that honestly white's position somehow is easier to play, because either you're getting checkmated or the situation in the center is so clumped in there that I think it actually helps white play a little more quickly, and black has to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And a big decision, because if you take on e4 here, d takes e4, and suddenly that d file is opened up right on your queen. You have to make the right decision whether that's something you want to allow or not, because it's very committal. You can't go back.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to get my queen to h3, but I recognize that there are some tactical difficulties in these variations. So, Danny trying to figure it out. He is now down quite a bit of time, and I'm
Hmm.
looking at him with his gaming goggles on. He's trying to work through this, and he played queen e7 to head over to h4 and maybe to c5, as you mentioned. That f8 a3 diagonal could be useful for a check on c5 at some point.
Yeah, and Danny really looks like some sort of like 40-year-old cyberpunk character right now, which is an interesting look he's going for.
Yeah, he also looks like he could be in Pokemon with that glove.
Absolutely. He looks like he was like the first trainer.
Oh my gosh, he would have loved to hear you say that. So, too bad he's playing and not joining us on the call. But yeah, he does bring his queen to c5. This king is going to slide over to. Okay, goes to
Yeah,
g2 to get out
G2
of
to
the king.
H1. And the thing is, once white solves the king, like once a king gets to G2 slash H1, I mean, there's nothing to worry about there. Now it's like, wait a minute, I'm kind of safe. Let's full send that attack we were talking about. And rook B1, yeah, he's going right for it.
And queen a4. This is an idea that Amon was mentioning 10 moves ago or so, and now it's
Yeah,
finally happening. Exactly your point, that the light squares are really vulnerable. That bishop on d5 somehow has survived way too long.
I know. And this bishop on G6 and H6 both look kind of unimpressive at the moment.
I think you have to take the bishop on d5 with the rook. I
I
mean,
was I was thinking about that. This looks like bishop takes a5 and queen c6 is in the air. Rook
yeah.
b5 in the air.
Oh gosh, but which one? Right, that's the he takes it.
Yeah, I feel like rook b5 and rook takes a5 was the way to go.
Okay, so if you take on a5, the pawn captures. Black's pawn structure looks bad, but the king can at least escape. So
Yep.
he does take it. You know, he
Rook
could have thrown in
b5.
bishop b7 check first. That would have won an exchange.
Ooh. Yep.
That's that would have been cool. But now look at Danny's
Rook
rook.
a5. Yep.
Oh, that rook's coming to b2.
King h3. No, he goes to h1.
Wait, why did he give up the a pawn? He could have. Oh, there was a discover check, I guess. So he goes like this. We give him all his pawns.
Yeah. Well, strangely enough, that king might run like all the way to h3. It's kind of hilarious.
Wait, that actually might be a good idea. Like
it's not insane.
no, it actually looks really good. Wait, king g5?
King G5.
Oh, wrong way.
Definitely to G5.
Yeah, king g5, king h4 was a serious idea.
Yeah, he's hopped up on getting that rook to B2, but white's not going to let that happen so easily.
No. And king h6,
Okay.
a little bit
Yep.
too late to get the king to h3 perhaps, but he can still go for it.
Yep. The problem is that rook on C8 can't get involved.
Right. You'd have to go rook c5, rook c to a5, and then try to do something like that.
Oh, there's a bit of panic here from Lawrence. He can't defend that a pawn in a good way. King G5, let's go.
King g5 is actually begging to be played at this point to get rid of the pin.
Take that. Oh, take
Wait.
it. Rook a6.
Yeah, and now he's taking a6 anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-oh. The king's
Man,
coming back.
Danny wants that king back, like really badly.
Wait, now opposite color
Oh.
bishops. Oh, he didn't take the pawn.
No. Ooh, oof.
And it's the wrong color H pawn, just for the record. I have to say
Yep.
it, make sure everybody notices.
It's the wrong color H pawn for both guys.
Unfortunately, it's not going to matter for Danny.
I don't think so. This is going to be bishop back to e4 and f6, or just bring that king.
Yeah. Here comes the king to help usher the pawn to the other side. That should promote relatively soon.
Yeah, bishop f2, at least try. Yeah, tough.
Yeah, now look at the dominance. White's up 3 pawns, and all of the pieces are doing well here.
Yeah, and Lawrence is keeping everything protected by something. And with f7 and c7 being threats, I don't think we're going to see rook g8.
King e7, just so you can promote next, and there we go. We see a promotion. No stalemates, no tricks, and
Nope.
that's an even match.
Wow, and 2-2 just like that. Lawrence, I felt like he really seized the opportunity. As soon as the king got to g2, you could feel like, Lawrence kind of sitting up in the chair, being like, wait a minute, my king's safe now. Danny, you're dead on the queen side.
That was obviously none of these games are going to be perfect. No matter who's playing in a blitz competition, there are going to be some mistakes. But that was a pretty well-initiated attack by Lawrence. Just what we saw stemming from the opening, keeping up the pressure, and it was very difficult for Danny to fend off the ensuing pressure.
Yeah, and we see in this game, Lawrence has gone for the French again, And he's even changed some of his lines. He's just gone, wait a minute, why don't I go bishop d6 and just e5? That's the way I think this line was intended to be played. And every time I see this line, Robert, I'm just like, why is Danny playing this? None of these positions look good at all.
No, this black's already castled. You don't even have an isolated pawn, which would usually be the drawback of playing an e5 type of move. So
Right.
black's pawn structure healthy, the pieces are active and coordinated, and white isn't doing badly and probably will castle queenside, I guess, but it takes a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, usually this pawn on c6, you take it and you just put it on f7, and that's like a position that maybe is playable for black. Put that on c6, you got a great pawn chain, you got the open f file. I think you're just sailing here with the black. Oh, knight e4. This is really good for black.
I completely agree because bishop takes e4. Black will get an isolated pawn on e4 once you recapture, but keep those queens on the board. Play for the initiative here. Black
Definitely
will have both bishops really active. The rook on f8 is staring at f2. No, this is not how you want your opening to go from the white side of a French.
Yeah, this is just crazy. Like bishop e3 almost looks like it has to be played if you don't take that knight. And then queen g6, just attack g2. I don't see too many good ways to defend it. If you castle, you're castling right into bishop takes h3.
No. And if you play rook g1, there's always bishop h2 to kick that rook.
Oh, that's cruel. That's cruel.
Yeah, this is no fun, and you can also tell by Danny's clock usage that he's not enjoying his position at all.
This is unacceptable. Like I don't think you can be playing e4, e6 and letting this happen against what is basically just a sideline.
Yeah, so it's honestly black's life is too easy here. Just look at this. You went bishop g5 just to go back to e3. You should have played bishop e3 right away, and then you wouldn't have all these difficulties. And it's interesting because black isn't like completely winning yet, but every single aspect of this position is favorable for black. You've already castled. You have a semi-open f file that you can work with, but the semi-open d file, you're already slow to get there, and it's a pawn chain, all well defended. So the minor pieces better for black, more active. Nah, no fun.
No fun. Queen g6, rook e8 is going to happen. If I'm white here, I think that I just want to castle. I want to castle queenside because I'm honestly too scared to castle kingside. Let's put it that way.
I think you're right to be scared. There might be like a very quick mate. If castle kingside, I don't even think bishop takes h3 right away.
Yeah, I'm sure it's at least fine, if not winning.
Right. So you have to end up castling queenside, but there might be knight takes f2 tactics, which is why not Lawrence. Danny is currently thinking here because castle queenside, you move your king away from the defense of the pawn. Knight takes f2. When the bishop moves away from f5, the rook on f8 will then be opened up to that f2 square. So I believe that tactic will work out in black's favor.
Yeah. Yeah. So even if long castle's here, knight f2 right away. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That is probably what Danny's going through right now. At I would say a slower pace than we are, which is why the clock is ticking and ticking. He doesn't want to castle kingside, looks too scary, and he's like, well, I got to go queenside, and then he's evaluating. He's like, wait a minute, knight f2, and I'm probably in trouble there, which is why he landed on rook f1.
That's a very difficult move to play psychologically because it's obviously now you have to castle queenside because you can't castle kingside to move your rook, and the sole purpose of the move is to defend the pawn, which is what you need. But then he's saying, well, actually, what's Lawrence's response here? How is he going to increase his potential in the position, take advantage of the fact that I haven't castled yet? Because castling queenside is happening next, and I'm not quite sure how black fully stops it. And he played c5. Wow.
Yeah, I think he wants to go for c4, try to force that light square bishop off the board. But rook f1 is one of those moves that never feels good to play when you haven't castled at least one in the other direction. Because it's almost a move that you play when you try to castle as a kid and you accidentally touch your rook first, and the arbiter comes by and says, sorry, you got to move your rook. And you're like, oh, man, I got to play rook f1.
It's happened to the best of us. So
yep, speaking from experience over here.
Yep, been there. And look at that, bishop takes c5. Pieces not defended well. And look at Lawrence. He did not see that coming at all. He's like, what am I doing? My position was perfect. And now I pushed a pawn, and then it was captured immediately.
Yeah, and what a weird like you just don't see that in chess too often, that one guy really has the upper hand, the other side isn't castled. You just kind of expand the pawns in the center, and all of a sudden one just gets picked off. That's such a weird feeling.
Yeah, and I think it stems from playing with like your intuition rather than with your thought. And
Yeah.
it's not to be overly critical of Lawrence, but c5 is a good move, if not for the fact that your bishop on f5 was not well defended. So you always want to look for loose pieces. Danny was able to steal the pawn on c5, bring the bishop
Right.
right back. But this isn't over, right? Bishop f4 stops white from castling, and he plays b5. It also makes castling a little bit harder because there's a potential attack. But I think that Lawrence, despite blundering a pawn there, he still has plenty of opportunity to create a legitimate attack.
But I think we've talked about this before, is that you were mentioning to me in the break that the previous bishop h7 that he sort of missed in the game where he got checkmated very quickly. After he missed the tactic, he sort of responded very quickly. And it's sometimes a bit of an ego thing. You don't want to tell your opponent that you missed something. It's like, oh yeah, that was part of my plan. I saw that move. And here he kind of got his pocket picked on c5. And I loved your bishop f4 move. That would have been the follow-up if you just spent a little bit of time and said, okay, let me make the best of this next position. I blundered a pawn, but hey, bishop f4, I'm still in this game. Allowing Danny to castle here, he just kind of chucked b5 out as a response to losing a pawn. And I don't think it was the best he could do. And now he's just suffering. Opposite bishops, we might see the same type of game that Lawrence just won, but now it's Danny's turn.
And we were talking about a position just like this, but with a black pawn on f7, right? You give essentially the equal material and you play against an isolated pawn. Now white's also up a pawn, and the king on b1 is perfectly safe. It's not very easy to play a5 and then b4 because white can probably just pick off this b5 pawn at some point. So Lawrence is grasping at straws to create an attack here. And you're right. I think it is, not to specifically say that Lawrence is the sole person who falls victim to this, but we all do. When we play something, we're like, oh, we overlooked it. Let me just make a quick response so my opponent doesn't think that I'm a fool and I'm blundering. No, I'm going to do something quick. So it seems like, wait, what was he thinking? What's he planning here? But in reality, no, this was another blunder. And as you said, a quick follow-up that should have been a position where Lawrence said, it's not so bad for me, despite the fact that I did make a big mistake.
Yeah, not at all. And the position we have here is going to be one where Lawrence is going to put pressure on the clock. That's his win condition, I think, is the best way to put it. H4 played. I think Danny's looking for H5. Positionally speaking, I would be really interested in G3 and then F4. But H5 is the aggressive attacking way to finish things off.
Yeah, and at some point, knight takes D3 can be a consideration, but you don't really want to keep yourself with an isolated pawn on d5 and this knight blockading it, which is why he did play bishop e5 here. Perhaps I'll take this knight on d4 if white allows it. So if I'm Danny, I probably wouldn't allow it, and that's why he played knight f3 and h5.
Yeah, gotta be h5. I think he's just going to continue.
Yeah, because if you move the g pawn, you lose the h7 pawn, then d5 falls after that. This is no fun.
Yeah, and this king on b1 with this pawn a3, b2, c3 setup, so safe. I mean, do you play like crazy enough a5 here and just b4?
You probably have to. Out of just sheer desperation, you go for that because white's king sitting safe and sound. The king on g8 now not exactly very safe over there. At some point, you can swing over to the h file, maybe now. But he did just go rook e1, so it's clear that he's not going to the h file.
This is looking slow by Danny. Rook e1, rook e2. I feel like the b4 move is happening here. Like, yeah, right now.
Well, we haven't been paying attention to the clock. Danny only has 18 seconds left, and that's why he's moving quickly. And look at this knight c6 idea, hitting the rook on b8, trying to take on b4 with the knight. And if black plays b3, at least the queen side is closed down from the rook's infiltration.
Yep. No, knight c6 is important. I think Danny was counting on this one. So Lawrence is going to go b3, and now maybe rook c8, rook e8. Both look reasonable.
Also, bishop f4 hitting the queen, and the knight on c6 is not defended.
Wow, what a discovered attack there.
Yeah, actually,
there's knight e7 in response.
Oh, that's a.
But that has to be what you want to see, because you can take on d2, take on d3, take on f2 there. I mean, this could get really wild with complications.
Right, all the pieces, and there it is, bishop f4, knight e7 check, probably the only move. He plays.
Yeah.
Wait, he just dropped the piece.
I don't think he realized it was hit. And I simply don't think he noticed that.
And if rook c6 is idea rook h1 somehow to go and check.
I think that is queen f6 seems. Did he not notice it either?
Well, maybe he's saying knight e7.
queen takes, and then queen d4.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh, he
What? Oh,
took back.
okay.
Your move, queen d4, is good though, for sure.
Okay, so what do we have here? Opposite bishops. I mean, my goodness.
Oh, hit on the rook. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Danny, Danny.
oh, that's heartbreaking stuff. Wow. Amon,
Oh my goodness.
there were tactics all over the place, and yeah,
That was actually an insanely tactical game. Like even missing some of the pieces that were hanging, it created even more tactics for the next move.
right. Wow, that was. I don't really have anything more to say. So we have a new game where instead of playing for G4 and all this stuff, it seems like we have a more closed positional battle. And I don't know who that favors. At least, they don't have to worry about these kind of crazy attacks just yet. But I can't get over that.
I think it favors us in the commentary booth because we can just calm down a little bit after that last blunder.
That was bad. So
Yeah, and you can tell Danny he's still thinking about that. This is one of those moments where like the camera pans into Danny's mind and the screen blurs a little bit, and he's just flashbacks to blundering the rook on e7. So he's really got to focus up here and get a good game in, because actually Lawrence has been on a roll ever since the break. He's come back. He's won 2 games in a row, and he's been looking sharp. That game clock is counting down, and there's only going to be so many games that you can get in the 5-minute portion.
And you're totally right that Danny does need to collect himself here, because right now his position is perfectly good, right? He is the one who is trying to make inroads on his opponent's king, the light squares for white over there.
F5,
and that's why he played F5.
yeah.
And he's saying knight e6. Okay, your knight's in there, but I'm collapsing your center. And if e4 can be chopped down, then d5 becomes a weakness. Then knight e6 will go rook f7. Just move my rook out of the way. The bishop is well defended on c5. So ultimately, Danny moving quickly, and it's turning out okay for him in the current position, but he needs to take a breath, because he is just about level in this match. He's down 1 point, but it's because of just blunders from both sides in that previous game.
Yeah, I think Danny needs to focus up here and not let the score run up too much in his opponent's favor, because I love his position. Take on e4 seems extremely reasonable, and I'm honestly even thinking about, there's lines where you give up your bishop for this knight on d4 and just go like knight g6, bring a rook to e8. It just seems really, really easy to play. That's like one option.
I like that plan, because there are often positions where your opponent has a bishop and you have a knight, and we hear, oh, the bishop is so strong because it plays on both sides of the board, but there's no clear target. Like, you look at the pawn structure, all these pawns are in dark squares, but the base pawn, c7 and g7, is immune to the bishop's attack from e3, or even if it gets to d4. So it seems like a good strategy for black to take on e4 at some point, to take on d4, as you said, and maybe you leave the tension. Maybe you take on d4 and just play knight g6 and say, maybe I'll play f4 for black if you're not careful, or I'll just take on e4. I like leaving more pieces in the position, the tension alive.
Yeah, so I think the biggest choice is whether he includes fe or not, because I think that, okay, he goes knight g6. Important to note that knight e6 isn't really possible at the moment because the bishop is hanging. So I think he might be planning for a bishop takes d4 type of position, but he says, look, it's pinned for the moment. If you want to go knight c2, be my guest. The e5 square is mine, and I'm just going to slowly, bring the rook into e8. If this queen ever moves, really watch out for queen g4 by black. And, if you get queen g4, you hit the e pawn, got knight h4 coming in, already looks pretty scary. So Lawrence has got to really watch for that g4 square.
And g4, and if the queen moves, say, to e2, then the a4 square also is one that that queen could jump to. So the queen on d1 doing an important job. Knight e5, of course, should be played. Your knight's under attack. Bring that into the center here.
Has to be played.
Great. This looks great for Danny.
Yep, there we go. And he might sneak that rook up somewhere, like rook f4, rook f5.
Yeah, rook f4, rook f5 looks reasonable, because especially on f4, if you capture the g pawn takes, and then watch out for like a king f3, rook g1 from white, turning the tables on black's king. So rook f4 is a really good move. I wouldn't be surprised if the response is queen a4. I mentioned that as a possibility if the queen left d1, and now feels like the moment.
Yeah, no, queen a4 is really important to keep an eye on. The queen on d1 was like perfectly covering everything, but at some point you got to move that queen to connect the rooks. So he's chosen the king side. Be on the lookout for Robert's queen a4 because that could be the difference maker in a lot of positions. Like takes on d4 followed by queen a4. There's queen c2 check. Bishop's hanging on d4.
Yeah, and the e4 pawn as well. So I really like Danny's position. He's trying to figure this out, and he looks like he likes his position. The way he's leaning in right now, he's trying to figure out what's the right way forward here because there's so many different options. But you should remember that the knight can now move from d4. Before the bishop on e3 was hanging, now the knight can move because on g1 it's well defended.
Yep, absolutely. Now the interesting thing is the knight on e5 and the pawn on h6 work to cover all the squares on the g file. And the only reason I mention that is after knight e6, I'm thinking, how do I attack the g7 pawn with the queen? But there isn't really a good way to pursue that attack. So even if knight e6 happens and Danny has to trade some pieces, I don't think it's that bad. We could even just get the queen in like queen a4 as you were mentioning, and I think it's still totally reasonable for him.
Agreed, completely. So it's maybe the idea seems much stronger than it actually is in practice with the knight coming to e6, so you can avoid it. But what I don't like is Danny spending all this time here.
Yeah, I think he's really conflicted about trading on d4 or not. Like, I'm not sure he's fully decided. I think bishop g1 is one of those moves where if you didn't play it, then Danny would make a quicker move because he's like, oh yeah, I got that knight pinned, kind of like how he had it last turn. But bishop g1 says, look, you got to make a serious decision now. That knight's jumping into e6 if you let me.
For sure. And so Danny's still on the clock. This is actually making me a bit concerned for him because even if he plays a good move here and the next bunch of moves, we just saw what happened in the last game. He was down to 18 seconds. Lawrence had about a minute and a half and was able to use time as a weapon. And that could be the case once again.
And what do you think of just takes queen a4 to look for a more concrete line? Because at this point, I think Danny needs to start thinking about the fact that 2 minutes is a lot of time when there's a lot of pieces on the board. Simplifying might just be better for the clock situation.
Well, I think he spent all that time wisely because he did, in fact, put his queen on a4 here. He's saying, I can take on d4 next. Your knight cannot move because e4 hangs with check to boot. So it seems like this position is turning in Danny's favor, and queen d1 is a response. That's not exactly the most inspiring move, but it's a very good practical move.
Right. Whoa. And wow, what a decision. That was played quickly. So he wanted the 2 rooks there if queen takes a4.
And that's d1. Probably what he was spending most of his time on, was not seeing that it's a possibility, but assessing it. Like, would the 2 rooks be better than the queen? The answer seemed to be yes. He gives the check on f8. Now, do you trade queen? I want to keep the queens on the board. I feel like white's king is weaker than black's king, so I would like to keep the queens on the board with a queen d7 type of move.
Right. Queen c4. So same idea. And the question is, after like rook c1, I think he wants to play queen d3.
That's actually quite annoying because there's so many tactics there with that knight landing on d3.
Yep. There's like rook c2 after trading knight e1, the weirdest fork you've seen.
Absolutely. And then you can consider taking on d4. Like, all of these variations allow, if that knight doesn't move from d4, black can still consider giving up the bishop for the knight. So I really like this move, queen c4. And, well, if Lawrence is b3 to kick the queen jumps back and the a3 pawn becomes a target as well. So it's not that easy for Lawrence to make a move because there are very concrete repercussions no matter what.
Yep, I'm trying to find out what move we want to play here. Like, looking at queen c2, strange stuff.
Hard move to play, but perhaps completely reasonable. There might be just trading queens, then trading bishops, and knight d3 still at the end because b2 and the f2 square are available for the black rook. So he plays b4.
Well, queen a2 is one move that comes to mind. And there's d4.
So he takes here. His knight can go into f3. Knight f3.
Queen a2. No, queen a2 isn't a thing
knight
now.
d or knight f3. You're going to win the e4 pawn by force.
Yeah, that's got to be it. And I would say probably f3, just because it leads to nastier stuff after queen e4 and discoveries.
Yeah, and that's that b4. That's one of those moves where you like can't contain yourself, so you just play something that is forcing, but then you
Mhm.
immediately pay the price. And well, this is the price.
Yep. Yeah, and there's not even going to be time for counterattack. There's no tricky move to throw in for a guy who has 20 seconds. This is just, I think it's clear cut. Danny's going to take on e4, and he's going to have just the bounce back game that he needs.
Yeah. And you see Danny's face. He does look a lot more into the match than he did at the start of this game because he looked deflated after losing
Yep.
game 5. Now, when you even the score, the momentum sort of shifts psychologically in your favor. It will be 3-3 if he's able to convert this, which seems pretty straightforward at this point. There's no tactic available to White to confuse Danny or anything. Okay, well.
Well, that'll confuse us, but I don't think it'll confuse Danny.
No, just take on e4. One check on c7. Good for you. King back to g8. That's that. The white king's
That's
getting
that.
mated very quickly.
Yeah. Queen
In fact-
a1 and just hope that he messes the checks up.
Yeah, this is not going to. So he could have a queen g2, but then you have to calculate: do I actually want to sacrifice and am I getting checkmated?
Yeah,
this
knight g5 is classy, and the rook and queen coordinate for mate. But I would play knight h3 mate, Robert, after king g1.
I like your style of knight h3 checkmate was the fancier one and would have been great. And by the way, we have just over 10 minutes. So if this game goes the distance, this will be our final game of the longest time control. And well, we have a French once again. Lawrence, going back.
Yeah, I don't know what the stats are on like games in the 5-minute portion, because I know that we have guys like Magnus and Hikaru who are out here setting records for the most games, but I feel like we've almost seen the least games.
Yeah,
like
for a 75-minute time control, only 7 games. That's impressive because
that's a serious average.
Yeah, they're really slowly. Well, it's because the games have been quite tight, right? They've all come down to the wire, both sides down to about 20 seconds or so. So it's been a close match. I do not like this opening. Okay,
Well, Danny needs a pep talk here. This is terrible. It is so unacceptable, I think.
I agree with you because even knight g4 here looks like a big problem for White.
It's almost winning,
right? Because you're hitting f2, you're hitting h2, queen h4. I mean, this is. We're talking about games going the distance. This game might end very quickly.
Yeah, I don't know what Danny is thinking with this opening, but I feel like he deflates himself because right after a good game, he always plays the white pieces and he plays this sort of ridiculous French position that he needs to change, honestly, in the break.
Yeah, this is in f4. Now the bishop queen h4 check. You lose the bishop at e5, but even maybe that is acceptable for black. But if just bishop d6, White has created all of these holes in the position.
Yep.
If you castle, there's bishop c5 check, at the very least picking up an exchange. So I can't recommend.
And let's just put castle, bishop c5 check, king h1, queen h4, h3 on the board. I mean, knight f2, queen takes f2, GG. If not, bishop takes h3, leading to more. So
right.
Yeah, that is something he does not want to do. And he's played c3. I don't think I've seen it. This is -5 according to the engine, Robert. That's an insane evaluation this early.
Well, I mean, I guess just bringing the queen in, queen h4 check. If g3, queen h3, the queen slithers into g2, hits the rook, the h2 pawn. Yeah, this is. If White were already castle queenside, I would still think that black is better. But the fact that you can't develop the bishop and the queen and get the king away, no, this is
lost. Queen g2. Rook f1, knight takes h2 is always on the cards. I mean, simple move like bishop developing and rook over to e8 never hurts either. And as he said, Danny he doesn't have the e3 square. So if he plays like the queen out, bishop d2 and castles, there's knight f2 hanging as soon as he does. He's waiting for him as soon as he does that, and he's not even going to get that far.
No, indeed, he will not. And this is something that I'm sure both players will look at during the break because in general, in this match, it feels like the player with the black pieces has been doing better. And I think the score reflects that as well. I think 4 wins for black, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
It definitely feels that way because Danny has been sometimes doing well against that English. He had that one game where he just crushed. He had one game where it didn't work out for him, but I think he came back in that last game and again showed that he's much better prepared, or he's faring a lot better against the English with the black pieces. So I agree. It's been a tale for both players in this match so far.
Yeah, so they are going to use that break to prepare their opening. But I mean, look at this: the king on d1. Black's not even
Yeah,
down a piece, by the way. Black
no,
should be
nothing.
down like a bishop and a pawn here.
And he's not. And he's playing c6 of all moves. It's just ridiculous.
Oh gosh, I mean, White can try bishop d2, king c2. Can like you run away quickly enough? Maybe you're not
Yeah.
completely hopeless here.
Well, c6 to me is just not enough conviction in that move. I think knight e3 and maybe getting that bishop out to g4 with rook e8 um, seemed like that could definitely work. Because if White takes on d5, I mean, you just occupy the d file, and he's regretting it already.
Yeah. Although I wonder, in terms of the greater match strategy, if continuing to play a position like this can be demoralizing for Danny, because he may fend it off for a few moves here. Think, hey, my position doesn't look quite as bad as it did a couple moves ago. It looks really
Yeah.
bad, but then you start giving yourself hope, and then you lose the game anyway, and you're like, oh gosh, that was a painful experience.
That was as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if he can somehow find a way to make this game last the distance and not give another game in the 5 minute portion and still win it, then Lawrence is just a god. If he
Right.
can draw it out and still win it, that's perfect.
Yeah, I'm trying to think here. In the 3 minute portion, who's favored, Danny or Lawrence, based on what you've seen so far today?
It's an interesting question. I think probably I want to say Lawrence because Danny's time pressure, I think, is going to be magnified in that section. So I feel like Lawrence is what I would go with.
Yeah, he has been playing much more slowly, but it could also be because when you're used to playing 3 minute and all of a sudden you play 5 minute, you allow yourself to think more because like, oh, this is way more time than I'm used to, and that
Yeah.
obviously doesn't help when your opponent's playing quickly and well. And yeah, this position, we still have 4 minutes and 40 seconds of this time control. This is not going to be our last game unless somehow Danny survives for a few more minutes, but it doesn't look likely.
No, the time, I mean, 3 minute time differential. Danny is just, as they say in poker, he's drawing dead.
Yeah, this is knight takes h2. You can just steal a pawn if you want it.
Yeah, well, it comes to f3 as well. But I think Danny would consider that, the lesser of two evils at this point.
Yeah, you get king c2 and rook f1 in. You just feel like you are on the verge of escaping. So that's better than what it feels like it could be. It still looks bad though. And I see the evaluation bar is sinking lower and lower. So Black is clearly very happy here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more about just deciding what your method of victory is. And knight e3, I think he's going to take back with the rook, then followed by like bishop g4, rook doubling on e8.
Yeah, that looks extremely forcing. And he plays king c1.
Maybe the best move because I did not see a way out after taking on e3 and letting the rooks double.
Yeah, that would have been painful. But here, I think knight g2 is just possible to kick the rook away from e1, and that knight e2 is falling after it. No, this is
yeah, bad. I think he would have to meet knight g2 with king c2.
Okay, so you're sacrificing the exchange and saying at least the game continues.
Yeah, at least we're playing at this point. Okay, he goes rook there, but among other things, taking on e2 is lights out because you don't even have a threat here. No. Can't play rook e1 and bishop f5 or bishop g4. Maybe the nastier move is coming next.
Yeah, king b1 actually can be met by a move like bishop g4, as you're saying, removing the guard from this bishop on d2 to win a third minor piece for the cost of just one rook. Too much material.
Yep. Far too much material. Bishop g4.
Even knight e3, just trading off more pieces, but I like keeping up the pressure. Bishop g4 looks way stronger as the rook on d1 is under attack.
Yeah. Yep. Oh man,
what it's one of these positions where it's painful for everyone involved. It's painful for Danny because he's losing. It's painful for us because we know that the result is not in question and the game continues. And for Lawrence, it's kind of like you start feeling bad for your opponent, right?
Yeah, you're like, man, this is just so winning.
Yeah. And this will not be the last game. I mean, it seems like Danny should be losing in just a few moves now, especially after b4. Bishop f5 comes to mind. Sink your queen into d3 on those light squares.
Yep.
But it's possible that it does become the last game, 1 minute and 50 seconds. So it's getting close.
Yeah, I think we see another one. just with that 15 seconds, rook e8 here, nothing can be challenged. A knight on g2 is actually so annoying.
You'd love to play rook e1, but you can't because there's a knight there. You're
Yeah, this is Dunzo.
Yeah, it is. Rook a2. Hey, that's a creative defensive move. I like that move.
Yeah, I'll give it to him.
Because rook e2 and king a1 happens. At least you're holding on to that bishop on d2 for the time being.
Yep.
Oof. Queen takes c3 and mate. Oof. At least it's over, you know?
Yeah, and we will see one more game in this portion. As you can see, the game clock ticking down. There's, little to no chance that somebody gets mated in less than a minute in this game. And wow, we see brand new signs of life here, Robert, with a new opening to end the portion.
Yeah, what do you think has happened to make Lawrence play d4? He has not been getting good positions for white, so that's probably just the answer to my own question. But now we have a queen's gambit decline. We went from some g4, g5 mess to the ultra solid queen's gambit declined.
Hey, what do you think caused him to play a new opening? Well, maybe it was all those bad positions he was getting with the white pieces. Yeah, that'll do it. I think both people in this match need to reevaluate their openings with white because to give them credit, they're both playing tremendously with black, and we need to see more. Usually, the white pieces are kind of an advantage and more pronounced in blitz. I want to say, but it seems like everything's flipped around for this match. So yeah, we're ultra solid. Queen's gambit declined, and Danny here is just gone for classic setup of take that pawn, play b5, and counterattack the center with c5. Very very by the book here.
Yeah, that pawn triangle is no more, the one from landing on the d5 square, but black gets very quick activity. And wait a second. Doesn't this...
He's dropping...
There's some kind of queen c2 that's bound to happen.
Yeah, he's playing dc5. Well, trade the bishops after rook there. Yeah. Play dc5 and take h7 and queen c2.
Yeah, I think this was... Knight takes e4 is not the move that you should play for Danny. Yeah, this is...
Yeah.
Dropping a ball.
Danny is realizing that, or maybe he's realizing it right now. Now he's realizing it.
Yeah, although he hasn't really moved too much.
Yeah, this is brutal because you play that endgame, and it looks like it will be an endgame. You're just down a pawn. This is the worst way to go into the break. He's going to be suffering down a pawn in an endgame where he's most likely to lose. And then he's going to be down 2 games going into the 3-minute portion where I would say that Lawrence's speed right now is going to give him the edge.
And this endgame is so bad that even if you put a pawn back on h6, white is still much better, right? Because the knight is better than the bishop in an endgame where the bishop has nothing to attack. So yeah, this is not fun. Not at all. And the rook's double. The knight has e5 or d4 to go to. This is, I think, objectively just winning for white.
Bishop wants to go desperately to b7, but then rook c7 just makes you cry.
Right. So he does put the rook on d7 first, so he can get bishop to b7, but knight e5 comes to mind. And then rook c7, hit f7, other rook to c1.
Yeah, knight e5 with tempo, or if you want to be very, prevent counterplay style, knight d4 and f4, and then just double the rooks on the c file and go to c7 looks pretty good as well.
That actually may be the most practical and, in fact, the smartest choice, because knight e5 there is rook d2, and then you just start thinking about things. But good thing.
Yeah, I see knight e5, rook d2, and hey, there might be knight f7s, there might be rook c7s, but I look at that and I'm like, I don't need to give him that much fun.
I'm with you. And he keeps the knight on f3 for that purpose. No rook d2 for you. The bishop on c8 is not hanging. So you do have one move if you want to play a move like king g7 or something. Because if you take on c8 twice, and this is what he's showing, that there's a rook d1 checkmate.
Well, Danny's making it a little obvious what he's up to over there.
Yeah, no surprises now. You put the rook on d8 and h4. Yep. Simple. King h2, king g3. You can just maneuver your king along the dark squares, but do not allow bishop takes f3. So move that knight out of the way.
I'm a big fan of knight d4. There's no e5 because the rook is covering, and you just want to get that rook into c7. So knight e5, knight d4 both look very strong here. Knight e5, I will say it looks a little bit stronger just because the rook's not on f8 anymore, and rook c7 after like a rook d1 trade is going to come with a lot more poison. It's going to hit the bishop and that pawn on f7, which is hanging at the moment.
Yeah, although I really do like the knight d4 idea you were talking about. It's very instructive just to say, I'm going to close down the position, put my knight in a dark square, you have a light square bishop, and you will have zero counterplay. So I can then
Yeah.
go win the game however I want. So I actually,
Even even if like the better move is knight e5, you'll catch me playing knight d4 like 10 times out of 10.
yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's just something you don't even need to think about. You know exactly what's happening. Black
Yeah.
is stuck, struggling to find any semblance of counterplay. And here, well, there's no counterplay because of the very direct tactics. As Amon said, the rook's on f8, which means f7 is even more vulnerable. And I think this is just game over.
Yeah, no, it's just a tough position, and Danny's gonna have to live through it as it is going to be the last game in the time control. So the time is officially up, and I'm sure it has been for a couple minutes now. But that'll be it for the 5-minute section, and these guys will get a break after this to reevaluate some openings. But already Lawrence must be looking at d4 and be like, wait a minute, why wasn't I playing this the whole match?
Yeah, it's this turned out well for him, but it was a very bad one move mistake by Danny, and it's one of those situations where you release the tension by trading in the center. Knight takes f7, by the way, right now is a free pawn, and then knight d6 comes. This is
I would absolutely resign that. It's like, don't want any part of this game.
maybe you want a longer break. You know you're going to lose the game regardless, so you spend the next 2 minutes in your clock, and then just have
That's
your
smart.
full break afterwards, if that's what you need.
That's smart.
Although I couldn't sit and stare at this position anymore.
Yeah, for too long. Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, this is bad, real bad.
Yeah. The if White can orchestrate pawn to f3, pawn to e4, then Black is really crying.
Oh, well, Danny, he just grabbed his eyes like, I need to see something new. I need to play better chess. And he did make a one move, very bad mistake in this game. So if this opening is repeated, at least for Danny, it's easy to see what went wrong. His position was fine until he dropped that pawn tactically. Whereas in those French positions, I think that that's much more strategic in nature, not just one simple move change. You really need to have a better foundational understanding of that opening.
And if Danny starts adapting and gets good positions with the white pieces, that flips this match around, because it really feels like Lawrence's French at the moment is like a free ticket to a good position. And that can change in a heartbeat. Like Danny looks at that with the engine, he starts to collect himself like, okay, Robert's gonna, kill me if I lose to the French anymore. So I gotta improve this. And trust me, it's not gonna be hard to find some lines that lead to an advantage.
For sure. And just quickly go through the Game Explorer, see what the top players are doing against these certain lines. And say, wait a second, White has a pretty good record against this line. Hey, maybe there's something I can learn from it. But now, Lawrence Trent out to a 2-game lead, up 5-3. Amon, if you were coaching these players, what would you tell them as we head into the shorter time controls?
Well, tell Danny that I'm no longer his coach. And if I was being a little more serious, I would sit down, look at that French opening, and really be like, look, this is a sideline to an opening that's already has, shaky reputation. There are lines out there for you, and you just need to stop allowing e5. There's no way that Black is allowed to play a French like that, get e5, and just get a good position. Even the position that you had in game 1, Robert, was better than this, where he played e5, and maybe he can reevaluate that one. The positions where the bishop was getting out to b4, I like those all better than what we're seeing. So if you're Danny, I think you need to collect yourself, realize, look, you're playing really good chess with the black pieces, and you're not playing badly with the white pieces, but your openings are just not giving you any chance to play well. So really reshape the whole structure with the white pieces if you're in Danny's corner.
I agree with that. And I would say for Lawrence, despite the fact that he has the lead, there are some things that he can work on as well. Every game we play, there are things we can take away from it. And for Lawrence, I think that he doesn't need to force the action so much, especially with the white pieces. He was playing these G4, G5 lines. Then in this last game, he switched. He was the beneficiary of a blunder by Danny dropping a pawn. But still, I think that with the match lead, you don't need to take as much risk. You can just settle down. And Lawrence is playing quite well, especially when he is given an opportunity to find a tactical option. So with that said, Amon and I are going to head to break. Everybody, we will be back shortly with the 3+1 time control of this I'm Not a GM Speeches Championship match brought to you by Chess.com. just because this match will end today does not mean that there's not more chess to be enjoyed tomorrow, as Arena Kings Season 6 begins Monday, January 11th. That is tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So, you can do the conversion to wherever you live, but it will be a ton of fun. A lot of streamers will be taking part. Amon, the Chess Bros, myself, who's who of the chess stream world will be enjoying the Arena Kings. But for now, Amon, we are stuck in the I'm Not a GM Speed Chess Championship sphere, and Lawrence Trent up 2 games in this match. I was thinking during our short break there that Danny, he gets the white piece in the next game. I think that he's going to go for it. I think he's going to play something super aggressive. He'll have looked at the French lines, but I'm not sure he needs to worry himself just yet. There's plenty of time left. What do you think? Should he play for a win, maybe at all costs right now, or play something a little bit more relaxed and just let the best chess come to him?
Yeah, I think Danny definitely does not need to overreact. These matches are long for a reason, and you can collect a lot of points in the bullet portion. And we've seen deficits, like crazy deficits, made up in just the bullet portion, where I think you and I maybe give that slight nod to Danny as the more comfortable player in that format. But Lawrence is kind of more of a question mark in that regard, that we don't know what to expect from him there. But if you're Danny, no need to panic. I think, or I hope, that he's changed things up a little bit in the break. Assuming he's done so, I think that the 3-minute portion is maybe going to just be a bit more familiar to him, Robert, as most players, when they play online, they're used to 3-minute chess.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is you see a deficit in the scoreboard, you start getting in your own head, I'm losing, I need to catch up. But Danny, I would say, is the stronger of the two in bullet time controls. He definitely has more experience, and I just looked, he is the slightly higher rated of the two in bullet. So, if you can think, I just need to be within 1-2 games to give myself a chance in bullet, don't just rush here. Don't say I need to win now and then end up losing the games. You cannot play for results. You need to be as objective as you possibly can be. And with the white pieces starting here in just a second in the 3-minute time control, I think that Danny does not need to just play hyper aggressive chess. He can play his normal stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of not needing to play hyper aggressive, that was the advice that you had for Lawrence, ironically. So it seems like the advice overall is everyone just calm down a little bit. Both guys have shown that they can play some really good chess, and we've seen a very crushing game just on the board from both sides. So we know that it's there, and sometimes when you have a crushing game like that, you really start feeling yourself. The next game, you just go for something way too aggressive. So don't need to do that. Keep it under control. Now we're back to this French. Is Danny gonna have something prepared here, because he can't keep walking into these lines?
And there we have it. Bishop b5, which is a way to pin the knight on c6. It also allows you to take over the e5 square. Black, if you take on e5, the knight will end up replacing the pawn once you capture on c6 first. This is what's happening. So Lawrence accepting the slightly more passive position for the time being, but says, I have the 2 bishops. Maybe down the line, I can gain some open space and use them to my advantage.
Yeah, already, it doesn't matter what happens in this game. I like the opening better no matter what. So this is already successful for Danny. He's got a position here, and I actually don't mind it for Lawrence at all. But the bottom line is that this is already better for Danny than what we saw. At least we have a game here.
Yeah, it feels like they're playing on relatively equal footing rather than Lawrence just having the advantage on move 8. And if you look at this position, it's closed down. And in a closed position, knights tend to be quite good against bishops. Look at this bishop on c6. Where's that piece going? It's staring into its own pawn on d5. So Black's best move, it might be d5 off the board. My bishop on c6 is great, right? That's what you want.
Just you take that pawn straight out of the game. And we see f5, g6, like, he's trying to make that bishop as sad as possible, Robert. He's putting all his pawns on light squares.
And he's going for g5. And that's thematic, a way to open up the king side, because only white's king is on that flank, whereas white would like to play a4, b4, b5. So we actually may see a very aggressive game from both players here, but I have a little bit more belief in white's attack than I do in black's, considering black doesn't have those pieces developed on the king side.
Yeah, and although both sides are going to be attacking, h6 feels very natural, but I would have given real consideration to knight h6 first, getting it to f7, then h6, bishop e7, and it kind of feels like you're almost playing a Benoni on the opposite side of the board here on the king side, where you're really trying to get that g5 break in, but your knight on g8 just can't help that break at all.
Right. And well, this is an interesting little move order situation where Danny started with b4 rather than a4, and Lawrence plugged the a4 square with his bishop. So I actually think Danny might regret that decision to start
Yeah.
with b4, even if his position is fine. Now I'm looking at the evaluation bar on screen, says about level. I think that playing a4 first made his play much easier to follow up.
Yep, start with a4, and then you can even take it slow with b3, or you could continue b4, b5. Now, queen h5, which looks like, makes the biggest threat in the game, is nicely met by knight g3, hitting the queen and covering h1.
Totally. And another concern I'm having long term is that if this bishop comes to b5 at the right moment, you don't escape with king f1, king e2. So king f1 here is now a bishop b5 check, and that's a problem.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's good to keep in mind that diagonal will always belong to black.
Yes. And I like the way Danny's playing, by the way, with g3, king g2, rook h1, trade off the aggressive pieces, because without the rooks on the board, you have no attack.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, is it time for just king g2, rook h1 here?
I like that. But then I saw the evaluation bar kind of go up a lot. So I'm looking where's the tactic.
Yeah, it looked like maybe just even a take time for a bishop f6 and then king g2 might have just been a bit better. I'm not sure. Get the rook off the h file.
No, I think you're completely right. That's what it was. Because kicking the rooks off the h file is a great idea. Now, for example, black has rook h2 check, sacrificing material. That's why rook h1 takes care of all those tactics. And white is up a pawn. The e6 pawn remains a weakness. And without the rooks, where's your attack coming from?
Oops. Rook h4 was coming to mind there as an idea. Not sure about that, but bishop h4, he's just looking to plug the entire thing and say, look, you're not operating on the h file, but I'm not sure I'm a fan of this. Now maybe the pin from the bishops and the fact that all the play is on the king side.
And I see the bar, it just dipped a lot. Bishop takes g5, followed by rook h2 check. This is a big problem. The knight on f3 overloaded, defending the bishop on g5 and covering the h2 square. That was a bad move. Bishop h4, then right back to g5. Clearly, Danny lost the thread.
So it's going to be takes h2, takes h2, king f3, and then like queen g8 or queen somewhere hit the knight.
Yeah, that looks scary to bring your king out to f3, but I think your ultimate point is that maybe you're gonna have to sacrifice your queen on f2 for a rook that lands there, and so that's
maybe you bring your knight back to h3 at the end, like knight h3 here,
and then queen. How does that queen attack the knight? I guess queen h8 is a potential move to just put all your forces against that knight on h3.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, this is in Danny's clock. His posture, his hand on his head right now all seem to indicate that he is, unfortunately for him, blundered quite a bit here.
Oh, this is really rough. I would even consider like bishop b5 to like stop the king from going to e2. Oh, Danny, let's go. King f4.
I like that move actually, because I don't see an immediate checkmate. And okay, queen came to h5.
That's a strong move.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, good response. Rook takes h3. Pick up the two knights for your rook.
Queen h6 would be maybe an underrated move here, but rook h3 is solid.
Queen h6 is so beautiful. Just pinning the knight on g5 so you can steal the knight on h3 for free. Oh,
goes for it. That's a tough move to face, and in the king f3, probably the best move. Now h3 is always hanging. You can get that bishop involved maybe if you want to.
Bishop b5 looks pretty good. He ends up taking. All right, that makes sense.
Okay, at least Danny's got some moves. He's figured out, hey, I can shuffle my king depending on where the queen is. That's good to know.
Right. And where's the checkmate? Right? How does this game conclude?
Right.
Now, how bishop f1 here?
Queen h2, queen e1 only move?
Wait, what about bishop f1?
Oh, that's just disgusting.
It threatens queen h1, like
queen h1 mate.
I guess the king can go up to f4, but bishop f1 you can't take it because knight h2 check. I think it's just a good move.
I think it's probably the best move.
Knight h2 mate is the threat.
That's dirty. That's dirty.
Well, wait, white's kind of
yeah.
Like queen h4, okay.
Yep.
King. Wait, now the king's kind of safe. I mean,
Oh, Danny's getting a pre-move in.
Yeah, black is still obviously better, but how do you win this game?
No, this is not that easy. I think you got to bring the king. King c6. Let's go.
Oh, actually, that's great. King c6.
It's time for king c6. They're both basically they're both moving a bunch of quick moves. They're trying to gain time on the clock.
Right. So queen.
Whoa, what's with queen takes?
Yeah, that looks. Queen d3, queen d2 coming. Oh, good move
b5.
b5.
I like Danny's energy here. Whoa.
Okay,
Whoa.
Yeah, that's not gonna help your cause.
That was not the energy.
No, but you were right though. He was doing everything that he needed. Oh wait, f3's hanging at the end of this. Okay, he doesn't take it.
Not for Danny.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is not going to work out.
No. This is what you call just bullet madness and a win for Lawrence Trent. Yeah, E5,
yeah, G4. E4. Oh, G4 was at least playable there.
Just hope that a mistake is made, but no, the pawns are too strong. Knight D3 check, E2, E1, game over.
Danny had his chances there. That was actually an insane comeback. It's kind of surprising, but not seeing your bishop F1, like insane kind of winning move. And it actually meant that maybe it wasn't so winning after all. Like you missed that one thing. It didn't look that easy.
No, it certainly didn't. And here we see that we have already and very offbeat, obscure position where the knight is on D6. And it's even material, but the pawns that have been captured, it's the B pawn for the E pawn. I think this is the kind of position Danny is striving for because of the match situation. And I think that for Lawrence, oh gosh, oh boy, is it just gonna be a mate in the diagonal?
Not sure Danny's striving for this. This is looking sketchy. That knight on B8 is not a participant, and there were a few moves in a row where Danny had like E takes D5 available. Quote unquote winning that pawn, and he didn't go for it. And I mean, I'm sure it's based on a little bit on some theory there, but I'm not sure if that was smart because now you take it, knight takes D5 on top of just the queen D3, which bishop B1 really gets ready for.
Yeah, and you can't play F5 because E6 is hanging. I mean, just can't play G6 because the pawn H6 is hanging. This feels not like tilt exactly. I think that Danny played this opening to try to have some winning chances as early as move 2 or whatever. But yeah, this is not going well. That's for sure.
No, it can't be. So what's the answer after queen D3? Is he kind of like playing? No, not knight F5.
Ooh. B6.
Yep. What's he up to?
Yeah, what's that? That seems kind of irrelevant, but maybe it's somehow right.
Well, basically, he doesn't want to open the position up, and he's saying, like, I think queen c2, queen d3 stuff is good enough on the king side. What's going on the queen side? Well, I just want to shut that down. The knight on b8, importantly, cannot join the game, and it could maybe via a6 had he reacted differently.
It's a really good point. So saying the quantity is less important than how the quality of the pieces are at play here. But now, I mean, can't black play some kind of bishop e4 seems...
Ooh, that's a sacrifice for me. You're hitting the rook on a8 and mate on h7. That's just winning.
Yeah, f takes e4, rook takes e4 is a Mon's point, and that just looks great.
Yep, that looks great. Queen d5 maybe is like a move, but yeah, I'm taking on e4 there, nice and easy. Bishop takes h6 is about to crack the entire game open.
Oh gosh, just pick that rook up, move it to some square, like rook b4 would be a winning move to go queen h7 checkmate, the pawn e6 helping out. Yeah, this is game over. This is a big problem.
Danny's down a minute, and I want to stress that the time difference is more meaningful in a 3-minute game. So if you're down a minute in 5-minute chess, that's not the same as being down a minute in 3-minute chess, and it's probably the worst to be down a minute in 1-minute chess.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it does get worse than that. And by the way, I've seen International Master Teddy Coleman in the chat who played against Danny last year, and he said, I was up 4 games against Danny heading into bullet, and he actually caught up. So Danny's bullet chess does give him chances, but not the way he's currently playing. He is playing to win from move 1, not with his moves, but with his wishes, and that's a big problem.
What do you think of queen h7 and bishop g6, followed by something slow like bishop d2?
I love it. That looks just
King
crushing.
f6, bishop d2. You play rook e1, and then bishop c3, and bishop h5. There's so many crushes there. I would go queen h7, but he's faced with a free rook in the corner, so it's the luxury of choice that might come back to bite him here.
And you have to give credit to Lawrence for spending his time here. A lot of us would say, oh, it's a free rook. Oh, there's a check on h7 and make one of those moves. But he's trying to figure out which one is better. He does go for Mons, check and check. Queen can't take on g6, and knight e5 check picks up the queen. And here comes your bishop. Oh,
bishop e4.
Queen g6 is mate. Oh, that's nice too.
Can't fault bishop e4. I mean, he wants to pick up the rook in a better way and leave the guy's king on f6. I think it's all winning here.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Lawrence figured everything out, and
queen f7, queen f5. It's also mate.
Oh gosh, yeah, this is
brutal.
very painful. And if you're Danny, you probably want to resign and just get the next game going. You're
starting get the next one started.
Getting into that territory where you need as many games as possible, and so you're down. Right now, White is down in exchange, but the rook on 8 can just be picked up for free. And so White's going to be up a full piece with an attack. So it's important the knight on f3 covers e1, just to point that out for everybody. There's no backrange checkmate. But with White with such a big advantage here, I think resigning and starting the next game as soon as possible is the right move.
Totally. Yeah, and there's not many moves left that are good or playable for Danny. Rook e1 is going to be lights out. The d5 pawn is loose, so the queen has to always watch it. Bishop takes h6 is also in the position. Some sort of combination of those two moves looks decent.
Yeah, bishop takes h6, queen h6, bishop takes d5 check. It just, at the very least, you win 2 pawns because you're already up a piece. So you give a piece back for 2 pawns, and then it's probably checkmate on top of that.
Yep. You're up a full piece. Bishop b7 is also playable. Let's not forget.
That's a move, I wouldn't even think about it, but it's probably the best move. Bishop
yeah,
b7.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that looks really good. And queen f5 check should be mentioned as well. He takes on h6.
Yeah, I think he's going for that line.
And it says mating, too.
Knight g5 and queen g7 is
that's
lights out. There it is.
That's checkmate. And that's a 4-game lead for Lawrence Trent.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this was 3-2 for Danny at some point, wasn't it? And now I feel like it's been 4 games in a row.
Yeah, maybe or 5 in a row. Is that no? It was 3-2 Lawrence. It was 2-1 Danny, and then
2-1. Okay, that's right.
It has been 4 games in a row. You're completely correct about that. So we have this setup again. I like this for White from the point of view that you have the knights, the position is closed, and Lawrence is the one thinking right now, and still plenty of time for each player. But he's trying to figure out, how do I properly play this position so that it's not just closed down. Ooh, the g6 square is, I'm eyeing that one. But
so Danny has played a4 before b4. He's definitely learned that, and that's an immediate adaptation. And meanwhile, Lawrence is saying, look, I didn't like the way that g5, I had to sack a pawn to get the h-file open last time. So he's gone for h6, g5 first, gives up a big square on e5 there. And I think Danny should be happy with what he's got.
Ecstatic. I mean, what more could you ask for? b5 is a huge threat because you can't ever open the a file. Oh my goodness. I mean, b5 is the move I would play if it's a bullet without even thinking, but maybe you do lose the pawn and you could regret it. So not my pieces. Happy to play b5. And his game, he probably should think about it before doing it.
Yeah, I would maybe insert like a rook e1 first, just to get on that e file. It feels like that's where you're going to want to be no matter what. Whereas the e4 square, you're always taking care playing f3. So kind of makes me stay away from moves like f4, being a little bit too aggressive there on the king side. I think it's, ideas like b5, takes, bishop a3, kind of what he wants to go for. And yeah, he started with rook e1, just a slow approach.
Yeah, and I'm reading the chat, and I see a comment there. Lawrence, he's doing the dumbbell thing again.
Yeah, he's got the...
Oh,
he's getting a quick workout in. Did he watch the last match between Alexandra and Greg Shahade, where Alexandra started the match with some workout weights?
And do you see the move they put h5, giving up the g5 pawn for free? Yeah, I think that he should do more of the flexing over the board and less so with the weights, because he just dropped the big pawn for free.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the blood left his head, went over to the biceps for a moment there. So H5 is on the board, and I'm not sure Danny's going to be too concerned seeing that. I think this is one of the games where Danny just, I think, has a massive edge and needs to win this game for the match situation.
For sure. He's winning. He won a pawn. Now he's winning an exchange because once the knight moves, the rook on d8 will be captured. And there's still some chances for Lawrence because of the opening of the king side. Not too many white pieces on that flank, but objectively, the position is overwhelmingly strong for Danny. Just take that rook on d8 next.
Yeah, and knight e4 is even worse because it will result in, well, after we exchange everything, a trade of queens, which is you can't allow. So yeah, what he's done here makes a bit more sense. Knight g4, more aggressive move, but I mean, takes d8, h3 to kick the knight out. It's always there. h5 pawn hanging.
Yeah, h3, what a good move. And Danny plays it saying that knight, even if it's not doing anything just yet, there could be some potential for it, especially if the queen landed on d8, so the queen go to h4 next. Let me first kick that knight out and then figure out if I actually want to take the exchange and now take on d8. Just give me that rook.
And doesn't that win even more things than before? Now he's going to have a full rook.
I don't know if that's enough material, but it does look very strong. I think Lawrence was trying to rely on some kind of knight takes f2 and opening the g file and things like that, but it feels...
I thought maybe h4 by Lawrence was like the trickier kind of in-between move to play. And he has gone for this, but he wants d4 and hitting the g2 pawn. But this is something you can just sit back and tell yourself, okay, this doesn't work. You can just start with that. Right. Tell yourself that and then find out why.
Bishop takes h4 seems like a good starting point. You're up a rook and a piece at this point, and queen g4 also has to be a good move because if you can trade the queens off, even if you lose both the knight first in g3, then the bishop on d8, you still have a rook for a bishop and several extra pawns.
Important to note, rook f8 is bishop f6. Otherwise, that would be a big catastrophe.
So yeah, Danny worked through this and figured out he has bishop f6. Very important move. Queen f3 here. Keep offering the queen exchange. Yeah. Don't let Lawrence keep those on the board. Even if he does keep on the board, white is doing well, but I would try to play queen f3 here and say
definitely
everything's coming off.
Everything's coming off. Queen c2 check. There's rook e2.
Yep.
And he's going to have to trade that. And yeah, you got an outside pass pawn here. I think it's pretty reliable. He's going to put that rook on d4 and the other rook maybe to h1 and just push.
Push him, baby. Where's Yasser when you need him? Just h4, h5, and there it goes.
Yep. And, you know, Lawrence he's picking up that pawn. He's going to try to cement that bishop on f5. It's not going to be good enough, but it is a good try. I mean, Lawrence was basically down a rook at some point, and hey, he's got this position in a 3-minute game. It's pretty reasonable. But I think if Danny plays this one route correctly, he'll be fine.
Yeah, and it's one of these positions where you can give up your pawn on e5. Like if you play f4, you give up some of these important light squares. That could be tricky. But as long as you can kick this rook off of h5 and play h5 yourself, so rook g4 here. I don't care about my e5 pawn. I just want to sprint that pawn up the board. Danny does so. And
yeah, love that move. If the rook takes an e5, as you mentioned, h5, h6, and the rook on e5 blocked by its own e-pawn, it's just really hard to get back in defense.
Exactly. And so Lawrence also down on time. Rook g5 now. Just bring your rook up.
Step by step.
Although you can't get the g6. Don't blunder that.
Yeah, I think if you ever have a chance, you want to sack your rook for that bishop as well. Like bishop f5, you snap that off the board and bring your king in.
Yeah, he's just going to go king f4, king g5. The good old-fashioned... Oh, went the other direction.
No.
Not sure why.
Oh.
Oh, look at this. Rook f7, rook f6. That's annoying.
Yeah, that's annoying.
So...
a3, a2, and rook takes h5, like the h pawn in general. And Danny gives up that pawn. Disagree. Big disagree.
Yeah, this is still very good for white, but much harder to convert.
Absolutely.
So rook a7, there's king b6.
King b6, and bishop kind of goes to f5. This is not the conversion that you need here.
Can you... No, don't take yet, but you can at some point consider taking that bishop on f5.
Yeah, king d2 and rook b4. Rook f4, good move.
Oh, no. Bishop d3 check.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh. Oh, and Danny is very frustrated here, as he should be.
Yeah, Danny might lose this game.
It's possible.
Very, very possible.
Okay, that was a good move though, because c5 pushing those pawns.
Yep. Take that and f4. Danny, you're really at risk of losing here.
Wait,
but
he could win now again because his.
Well, he's supposed to win. He's up on time, and it's
Rook takes d4.
Takes. Rook f4 takes, and you queen with check. But white has the extra pawn.
Okay, so
that was sneaky from Lawrence, though.
Yeah, and if queen c2, there's queen e4 check. So that's why he went king here. Excuse me, queen c5.
Okay, repeat.
Now king g4. Okay, no checks.
Nicely done. No checks is the worst feeling.
Yeah. Okay, now goes the pawn, but there might be... Oh, queen d5 is queen e5 check, so you couldn't check from over there.
Queen h3 is the nasty check, though.
Yeah.
Got to go f6.
Queen h4 now.
Queen h6. Queen h6 was the draw. Or this is good, too. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Danny had to get his queen back close to that pawn. Just spend a move, bring it back, and often those queen end games are the ones that you usually win. Do we have a break or?
We do. The players get a mid time control break so they can refresh themselves. Danny will have the black pieces when we resume, but for now, Lawrence Trent enjoys himself a 4-game lead. And Aman, that game just there, that has to just crush your spirits if you're Danny, because you had the win in the bag a million times over.
Yeah, you have the H pawn pushing. You're up a rook at one point, up a piece in exchange. You name it. Danny had it in that game, and that was the first time that we've seen him prosecute a good opening into an advantage, into what should have been a win. And if Lawrence is getting away with even those, plus he's winning some games himself, I don't think Danny has a road to a comeback unless he can turn some of these games around and at least get back on the board for his confidence.
And we will see when we return in just a few minutes for more action from the I'm Not a GM Speeches Championship, brought to you by Chess.com. And we are back ready for the second half of this 3+1 second increment time control. Amon, we know that Lawrence is out to a big lead. Danny has played some impressive chess along the way, but the results not matching his level of play, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I think this match has been a little more psychological. Like Lawrence says, felt like he's had the upper hand in most time scrambles, felt like he's just been up on time in general on the clock. And as I mentioned, I think that becomes more pronounced. And we've seen that in the 3 minute section. Lawrence Trent has really run away with the match a little bit in this format. So in the second half of this format here, after the break, Danny is really going to have to come back, just collect himself, and get a few points on the board. Because I think if this trend keeps up with the points Lawrence is scoring, even if Danny makes a comeback in the bullet, it's going to be very hard to make up this kind of distance.
Agreed. And in game 7, when Danny lost that one, then he had one final game, the 5-minute time control. He lost that as well. We blundered the pawn on h7 with check and the c5 square. So it seems like things have just been getting out of control for him. And now with the black pieces, he needs to stop that spiral. And right now he brings his knight to e4. This is a common idea that if you can play f5, you feel pretty decent about your position. However, I think knight fd2 instead of rook to e1 was a good move there.
Yeah, I was going to point out something interesting that happened that was just a product of the players not being stopped, was that Lawrence played this opening and got to see that Danny was going to play the Queen's Indian, and then the game was aborted, and then they took a break. Right. So it's just kind of weird. Danny hadn't played that before. Lawrence probably went in the break like, yeah, I might take a look at a few lines in the Queen's Indian all of a sudden.
Yeah, it does give him a little bit of insight into his opponent's repertoire here, but I like Black's position. I tend to in these openings because you look at these double C pawns and they're stuck in place. You don't even need to play C5, which sometimes is a good move to then try to open the C file. Look at this, Queen C8. It gives you more flexibility. The queen can come directly to A6, or you can play C5, and just that C4 square, it feels very vulnerable here.
Yeah, I mean, Queen A6, and sometimes even trading the c7 pawn for the c4 pawn could be in Black's favor, just to get that end game, bring the rook to the c file, and not deal with any tactics. And maybe that's the type of game that Danny wants, and he really can excel in.
I'm with you there, because you know, in theory, you're like, I don't want to give away a pawn on c7 for a double pawn on c4, but there's that backwards pawn on c3 that always has to have an eye kept out on it. So he said he plays bishop f6, which makes a move like knight e5 a little bit less welcome, and maybe c5 comes in where there are more tactics available, and h4 by Lawrence, just playing on the king side here. What's the point of that?
Well, I think after queen a6, he's generally looking to meet it with knight d2. Just keep that under control, and in the meantime, after knight d2, or regardless of that move, I think he was looking at the move maybe d5 and maybe e4, just to kind of break things open, say, look, you've got a knight and a queen that are really offside on the queen side. I'm looking to play on the king side with e4, d5, maybe h5 at some point, h6, and say that, look, your pieces are on the wrong side of the board to help defend.
Yeah, that actually makes perfect sense. So that's why Danny, I guess, brought his queen in from c8 to c6. And wait, what? Isn't the c4 pawn just...
I mean, rook b4 was really calling to be played. Danny did something a little tricky, by the way. He played queen b7 and then queen c6, and Lawrence was probably like knight d2, bzz, knight d2. Bzz. It wasn't working for him because it was pinned. So that was sneaky by Danny, but I think Lawrence did have rook b4 to cover things, or there was maybe bishop e7. What a weird position.
He probably had that, but it looks very awkward, and that's why Lawrence quickly went king h2 and rook g1. And objectively, Black's position is great here, but we've seen in the past Lawrence getting himself in a tactical position where he has come out on top, and if he can make g4 work and open up the g file, bring the second rook over there, you could see the Black king getting in some danger. But for now, with that knight coming into e4, for example, it feels like Black should be very happy here.
Yeah. G4, and this was expected. Whether it's good or not, it was expected. I think you could give consideration to queen e4 if you're trying to get the queens off the board, knowing that the end games are going to be good for you. Yeah, e4 looks like a great move too.
Although queen e4, it's the practical choice. Just like, let's trade these pieces off. Although here, queen takes c3, I guess you can accomplish that while stealing another pawn. Oh, but d7's hanging. There's more things to calculate.
Yeah, things, just bunch of things. I guess queen e6 is also possible, trying to play d6, saying, look, f2 is hanging, but at the same time, white wants to play f3, kick that knight out, and then continue from there.
Yeah, and h4 is hanging, but are you in time to capture that? Your move f3 looks very strong here, just to kick the knight out, but knight d6 can be played as a simple response.
Yeah.
And what's the follow? How does white take advantage of the fact that you kicked piece in the last couple moves? And can you take on h4? I want to take that pawn, but I'm somewhat worried that I'm opening the position up even more. And I know I'm up a second pawn, but opening files.
Yeah, you have to deal with the move c5 as well after bishop takes h4, just as like kind of a hit on your piece there, and then maybe d5 follows up, hits your queen. I think Lawrence is doing the right thing, which is, hey, your position is already a little questionable. Why don't you dare your opponent to take another pawn, which usually people don't want to do. They're like, that feels a little too greedy. So he's sort of maybe leaving it there a little bit like a bluff, but I like what Danny's doing. He was more controlled. Don't worry about that pawn. Trade pieces.
Yeah, it's a great choice. And knight takes f7, rook f7, bishop takes c7. Looks like a hanging pawn, but then you play d6, and the bishop gets trapped on c7. So there are tactics still available in this position.
c6?
Yeah, c6 looks strong. Just kicking the rook right away from the defense of the knight. Now,
yeah,
that's just material.
I think he wanted some knight f7 trickery, and rook takes f5. But after knight f7, you can take that rook on b5.
You can and you will. That's just scooping up material, and looks great for Danny. So he's playing a really nice game after what must have been just this like hurtful game where he didn't win right before the break. Now he took on f7. Rook h5. Rook h5. Commentator's curse. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
How does that happen? Take the rook. There's no threats for a knight on f7.
So you don't trust yourself. That's what happens.
Oh, this is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you can't take. Yeah, I was gonna say you can't take on d6 even. Yeah, the bishop's just lost. g5. May as well chuck that in there.
Yeah, just
nope.
Bishop g5.
Oh, okay. Well, on to the next game for Danny. It's like even when he plays these great games at the start, he's not playing them start to finish. He's playing them start to like 2 moves before the finish every time, and that's not enough.
It really feels like he doesn't trust himself. And the game before the break was different because he was just winning, heading towards an end game. That game, there were still complications to be figured out, and he didn't take the rook on b5 because he probably thought, oh, the knight will give me a check, or there's something against my king. Whereas if you gave Danny even a fresh slate, that position on a new day, he'll just cruise. And what is this, a5? I mean, this has to be horrible for black.
Even b4 here looks very reasonable. And Danny is probably at the point where he's like, listen, at this point, I don't care if I trust myself. It's time for b4. I'm down in the match. We have to turn this around somehow. And I think maybe that was the kick he needed. He's like, this is not acceptable. Just b4. Let's go. And I like his position right here.
This looks horrible for black because you're up a pawn, but you're down several moves in terms of development. It's so easy for white to play rook to b1, or maybe rook
get
to
that
c.
rook over.
Which files we want to operate? We can play rook c1, we play rook b1, and then our knight to e1, knight to d3, for example.
Oof.
Yeah, he just pushes
a5. There's okay, knight h6. He wants knight f7, g5. But I just think that's too slow. You just don't care, right? You grab all your pieces and you just throw them on the queen side, wherever they'll go.
But how do you actually end this game? Like, that's the annoying thing. Of course, white's attack looks strong, and he just puts his knight on f4 and says, no attack for you. I've hurt your pawn structure. You can go knight h5.
Knight d3.
Or knight d3. Both are good. Take those dark squares.
So is it time for something as slow as like knight d2, move the queen, knight b3, knight c5? Like knight on c5 feels like you're closing in on the end of the game, but you do move everything away from the king at that point.
Yeah.
I think he's thinking about it though. I think that's his plan.
Right, knight d2, he does it.
Yeah, it's definitely his plan. I don't think it's the right one, but it is what he's going for.
Yeah, if you double the rooks in the G file, at the end of it, white plays G3 and says, "Oh, okay, what did you accomplish here?"
Yeah,
And that's a good move, I imagine, because if
it
knight
looks good.
B3, you can play like bishop C4. Do you
Bishop
want to
B4,
take?
even just take the knight and say, look, if you play A6, I got B6 and knight C5, I'll take it at all times.
I'm somewhat concerned that once you give up the bishop, then the knight moves away and the B7 pawn becomes a very big
Mm,
target. But maybe
yeah.
you are right that you have to do this and just hope that it works out. Just it feels not great. Whoa.
Okay, knight C5. And I would use the knight that's not attacked. Or sorry, the knight that is attacked.
To knight D to
Knight
C5
D3 to C5. Yeah.
looks reasonable. And yeah, trading queens doesn't feel good when you're down a pawn. But even there, white has a good position because E6 pawn is the weakest pawn. But he does play his knight into
And
C5.
is it gonna be bishop C4 here? Looks
Then is
like it.
there knight takes B? I don't know if it works, but I'm trying to make the attack work. Yeah,
Ooh, yeah, knight B7.
So rook G6, calm move.
Yeah, I mean, good question. Hey, what's next for white over there?
I don't know. I
Rook
really don't.
G6 is nice because it guards E6. Nice little multi-purpose move there.
Yeah, you can double the rooks. You protect the pawns. Your queen is free. A6 played. B6.
B6 immediately.
So where does your queen? Is BC5 a threat? Because knight A5 could be a response. So like perhaps you can give up this knight on C5, but it
Right.
looks.
The BC knight A5 is interesting. There is queen B6 after that, so I'm not fully convinced, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Otherwise, if you're just trading queens here, then A6 was horrible.
And you can't even trade queens, right? Because knight A4 is bishop
Yeah.
takes A4, and knight E4 just take that. So yeah.
What's the play here?
An extra minute for Lawrence as well.
Maybe like rook C1. And then if you take on C5, then you go knight A5 and you have like DC at the end.
Maybe you just start with knight A5. Okay, he played rook C1, so he's going for this kind of line here. But
yeah, this is very sketchy. I think he's going knight A5. I don't
knight
trust
A5,
it.
no, I don't trust that. Even queen E8. Like, can I just run away? Then knight
True.
B7. At least it's tricky, right?
It's tricky.
Queen A5 at C4.
Okay, C4, and that's it.
Yeah, no more attack for you.
No, C4 hurts here. And look at the time; he's just gonna resign. He's just like had enough of that. Had enough with the way that he's playing. And I think Danny's at the point where it's not that he doesn't trust himself anymore. He's just like he's not having anything go his way, even when it looks like the position is so dominating. I feel like he kind of stopped calculating that game at some point, and he was just like, yeah, let's intuition. Let's just throw these pieces, and then all of a sudden, you can't throw them anymore. Ran out of them.
Yeah, the thing that Lawrence is doing best of all is playing very quickly. So even when he gets into some shaky territory, he's able to use the clock to his advantage. And Danny hasn't been able to figure this out throughout the day. And here is another example of this: just pawn E4, and after pawn E4, maybe just even take it again with your knight or play E3. It's not a position that looks particularly good for black.
E3 or bishop E3. He's gone bishop F4, and he's opened up a 6-point lead now. And I mean, G5, I mean, I don't know how much he's calculated G5, but it looked like he was almost ready to play bishop C7, knight D5, take F6, and FE.
Yeah, looked worthwhile for sure. And that's why neither player, gets to see that happen. Knight E7 play. That's a good move. Knight G6 to go and get that bishop on F4, and that would make E3 and other squares more vulnerable. So I actually think that Danny's position is good here, and he's moving quickly. So that's the big and in the position. He is moving very quickly, so he should be able to continue improving his position.
I don't mind C6. It kind of looks bad at first sight, but bishop C8, bishop F5, or even just to E6, queen D7, the knight on C3 is the piece that needs improving. If that knight was on F3, there'd be an E5 square waiting. But knight on C3 is not a great piece here, and E4 is looking to try to remedy that.
Yeah, and he's giving up a pawn because the pawn takes E4, the D4 pawn is under attack with check. But what Lawrence wants to do is get that knight to D6 and just starting to create some very concrete issues for Danny's minor pieces. So he does take with the queen on D4. I think that Lawrence will not trade.
Maybe king H1.
Yeah, I like that because you can then win the bishop pair, and that could be a problem. Whereas if you take on d4, oh, okay, so it goes bishop e3 instead.
He wants the bishop on d6, or sorry, on f6, followed by like a queen d7, and really, really getting in there.
Yeah, though the fact that his rook's no longer on c1 is a problem, because with the rook on c1, you'd have knight d6 ideas, but now isn't black just up a pawn?
Yeah, that wasn't the best by Lawrence, but I don't think you're too concerned here if you're playing white, because that blockade is fantastic on d4.
Yeah, and if rooks come off the board, it's immediately going to be a drawn position. So
yeah,
I think white can just play king f2 next and try to play rook e1. And
not that he did this intentionally, but match strategy, there's 7.5 minutes ticking down here. I'm not sure this is the best for Danny, because he's going to play this a while and he has a good chance to not win it.
Yeah, so I can't really force a draw, right? There's no way for Danny just to be like, oh, you must make this draw, otherwise you lose. No, I mean, Lawrence can just kind of maneuver around for a while.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not good. Although, if you play this long enough and Lawrence starts getting time trouble, that's how Danny could win this game.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a chance Danny wins it, but it's almost like Danny's going to win this game. It's going to take so long that you start to even wonder if it's worth it. But,
right.
But yeah, I think Danny should play this on, hey, he's up a pawn. This is a chance. Absolutely.
Although I like what Lawrence just did, because he's going to play rook d4, and he does so. If the rooks are traded, no winning chances for
immediate draw. And Danny is admitting it's a draw, but Lawrence doesn't have to take the draw right away.
No, Lawrence would be smart to play king e3, then play bishop h8, bishop g7, bishop c3. Just use that bishop on a yo-yo string on the diagonal and waste time.
And that's exactly what he's doing.
And if I'm Danny, I'm not making moves like a5. I don't want a new position. I want the same position. Right? I want to make that draw.
Yeah, this is not what you want. Danny offered a draw, and he took it.
Wow.
Look at that. Would you have taken that draw, given the fact that you're up 6 points here?
I feel like it's the considerate thing to do from a broader gamesmanship point of view, but I think that, why would you? Because you can waste time. Like, for your own benefit, I don't know. It's one of these situations I always find tricky, because I would think that I wouldn't want to do that, but if it helps me win the match, which is what my goal is, then I don't know. You've done nothing wrong by playing on.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of doing things wrong, this opening has to stop from Lawrence.
Yeah, the problem is he's winning the games. So why, he's gonna have to take a beating for it to just, okay, now it's gotta stop. This one, Danny, you got it, buddy. I mean, put him away. This is too much here. Too much.
Just b5, queen b3, pawn c4. Just throw all your pieces forward. Yep. Doesn't rush it. This is not good at all for black.
Nope. f3 looks maybe unnecessary, but I understand it. Like, didn't want to see pawn f3 on the board, but looked unnecessary and gives away some squares for no reason.
Agreed. So queen b3 looks very logical here.
Yes. Yeah, queen b3 or a b5 in some order.
What is black aiming for in this position?
I think he's just playing like knight f5, bishop e7, h5, g4. Like, he's just kind of doing that. I don't think that he believes in his position, but hey, it's solid, and if there's no breakthrough on the queen side, he's just hanging out.
Yeah, you're right. He actually has a field where h5, g4, rook g8, g4. Even though the f4 pawn drops, at least you can.
Because look at that reaction, h3. It's just not like you don't need that move.
Yeah, it typically helps black, because now you're opening up more lines when you get g4.
Yeah, like if g4 happens and that pawn's on h2, the most that can happen is the g file opens up. And now after g4, the g file could open up by taking on h3, and if you take first, that's 2 files open up no matter what.
Yeah. So how does Danny actually increase his attack here? Because rook c1 followed by c4 is an idea. He plays a6, trying to just open up the b file. But can you take and then run your king to d7 and just run away?
I think that's what he's going to do. I don't think he likes b6 because a5 gets played. He would play b6 maybe if there was no other or second a pawn. But here he just takes it, says, look, knight c5, I'm always capturing. Meanwhile, I got g4 coming, and I don't really care about any of the pawns. And queen b8 check, king d7, there's nothing special about that.
It just looks like it should be good for white, but here comes black's attack. And when you played h3, you're opening up more lines, exactly what we were talking about. Here, rook takes g4, the h file is open, the g file. There's going to be pressure on the g2 square, though that knight on f4, that's really a heroic piece because it defends the pawn, and also at some point the e6 pawn could feel quite loose.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, what do I do next as white? That's the that's the issue that I'm having.
Yeah, knight takes g2 is suddenly a threat because you just kind of sacrifice a bunch of pieces, and the queen g6 at the end. The knight on d3 is loose. The king is out in the open. So I would not want to allow that. That's for sure.
Yeah, knight g2, take everything, queen g6, and all of a sudden we have this position where like all of Danny's pieces are on the queen side. There's nothing going on over there.
And you can play queen f7, or you can take on g2. As
I think knight g2 is the way to go. Bishop h6 is where you kind of forget that you need that guy to stop knight c5. So don't be doing that.
Actually, you said bishop h6, and wait, that actually looks good. And then you said you finished your sentence of, wait, you need to cover the c5 square. Yeah, very good call.
And that's exactly how the brain would work too. Is like, okay, bishop h6 looks normal, but Lawrence, he seems to be finding everything he needs to find. This might not be the best engine move, but I love it.
Yeah, it looks very good to me. And I don't even see a way for white to fend this position off because your king's out in the f file in the open. There's a rook on g4. There's a queen coming into the game here. Rook takes g2. This is exactly what's on. Queen g6 takes d3.
And now that you've taken the knight on d3, now you can move that dark square bishop.
And you should, because that rook from d8 wants to go to f8, g8, or h8. I'm not even sure which square it's going to. It depends on where the king goes. But king h1, there's bishop b4, for example.
Just look at this king. There's nothing within like a 4x4 box of it. Like, this is ridiculous. So exposed here. Danny's king is just going to get hunted down by the pieces. And don't forget, like, it's down a minute on the clock as well. This is just all going wrong for Danny in this match, as it's becoming more and more clear that Lawrence is just playing fast, comfortable. He might not be getting the best positions, but they're ones where Danny is not able to prosecute the advantage.
Yeah, look at this position. King out in the open. You should probably play king e1, king d1, king c1, and just run your king to where you have pieces. But it's a position where it's actually even, except for the fact that white has a rook and black has a bishop, but the rooks are not actually helpful right now. You have the open b file. That's great. Yeah. But it's not leading to checkmate. And on the other side, the king on f2, here's bishop h4 check, rook f8 check. Oof.
Yeah. This is over. He wants bishop there and queen f3, but bishop h4 first, followed by the rook getting involved, is going to lead to mate somewhere.
Oh.
That'll do it.
And we have time for one more game. It looks like there's 10 seconds left.
Yep. So this will be officially the last game in the 3-minute time control. And at this point, it's like if Danny loses another game, it's not only the demoralizing feeling of going into a break on the loss, but just that the lead is going to be so insurmountable. It's going to be 8 points at that point, and that just feels like too much.
And finally, we have seen this knight fd2 move. Maybe we saw it once before, but taking advantage of the fact that bishop on b7 is not defended. Yeah, this position opening up, black's king in the center.
Now, hang on a sec. This is different than last time.
Yeah, bishop h3 probably could have been played there.
Well, it's just that, wasn't he castled last time? How did he like steal a move there?
Oh yeah, how did he?
What just happened?
Oh, did the rook go to e1, I think, for Lawrence? So instead of playing rook e1, he immediately played knight f3 to d2.
Right, which is, yeah, there we go. That was it. That's much better. Okay, that makes sense.
I'm taking this bishop on f4. If I'm Danny, I'm down 7 points. I'm taking on f4 and asking questions later.
Yeah, that's very reasonable. Just go follow up with bishop d6, knight d7. Because now I think he could even play bishop e5, f4. Just kind of chuck that bishop into e5. Rook takes f4, if it's their next move, is definitely a consideration.
Yeah. Okay, I mean...
Oh, still there.
If it's there one more turn...
It's a consideration.
Now's the time, right? No!
Oh, okay, he's not doing it.
But now the bishop comes to e5, just like you were saying, and that's a pain.
Yeah, both bishops look good here for white. This is Solid, just solid for Lawrence. Here comes F4.
You
Well,
don't
not even necessary at the moment, but
right, exactly. I was say you don't even need it yet in the rook c2, rook e2. That's like a pretty classy rook lift by Lawrence, just to double rooks in the e file. So he
yep.
sees that that's where he wants.
I like bishop c8.
Yeah, bishop c8 looks reasonable. And then you trade and play rook e2, I guess.
Yeah, no, this is comfortable for Lawrence. Like eval might be equal-ish, but let's be fair. This is easy to play for white. I love the rook c2, rook e2 idea. Danny's giving up on trying to remove that bishop. He says, "All right, that's yours."
Yeah, and now the e file.
Bishop c7.
I was about to ask you, is there some bishop c7? Yeah, you just win an exchange. Oof. Yeah.
Oh,
Bishop,
okay.
He dropped it back. And white is still doing great. You have control of the only fully open file. The bishop on f4 better than the counterpart on f8. The bishop on b7 way worse than the bishop on h3. Queen e6 check. Just like queen e6, queen f7. Can I just bring my pieces in and?
Yeah.
Oh, the queen gets trapped.
There's no.
The queen's getting trapped. Bishop c8, bishop c7.
Oh my goodness. Bishop c7. Oh, he's just walked into it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Lawrence has missed his fair share of wins in this game so far.
Yeah.
And he's still winning.
Well, you have the active pieces here. It's a queen on f7, a rook on e6, and you just look at the pieces one by one. Probably the only about equal pieces are the knight on f6 and the knight on c3. Otherwise, all of white's pieces are dominating.
Yep. Someone in the Chess.com game chat just said that Lawrence is on Danny like a cheap suit.
Oh gosh.
Knight g8. Oh man, Danny's really setting up the board here for the 1 minute portion. This is not a good look. There's gonna be some puzzle rush win here somewhere.
Yeah, it's like, is there going to be some h4, h5, h6, and then is it that?
Knight e2, knight. Ooh. I like knight e2, knight f4, and then there's gonna be some dirty stuff there.
That actually looks great. Can you stop that? Knight e2, knight f4, queen h5, maybe.
I don't think so.
Oof.
Knight f4 is gonna be. There's not a single move that makes a threat. Rook's trapped, queen's more or less trapped. c5, knight f4, and Lawrence knows there's gonna be just a KO here.
Yeah. C takes d4. Your rook finally doing something on the open line, but as you were talking about, some knight g6 or even just knight h5 going for the g7 pawn, that should do the trick.
Yep.
Queen g5, I can get behind that. So the knight can move, but there's queen c1 check and all that stuff. Oh. Okay, trading rooks. I see the
and then queen e7. And then queen e7 maybe.
Yeah, and even if you lose the d5 pawn at some point, it's worth it. But I was just looking at the bar, and it went down quite a lot there.
And I don't know why. Maybe bishop e7?
That looks reasonable. Even pawn takes d4, I guess, is playable here. Just to say the bishop on e5 is not defended very well.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. That must be the vibe. Because then you go bishop c5 if he takes back.
Right. And at least you're trading pieces.
That's definitely it. Yep. Danny locates that one. And will we see Lawrence getting punished for not putting this game away? Bishop c5. Go, go, go.
Yeah, because otherwise, knight e6, when the g7 pawn would have been a disaster. So bishop c5 says, okay, we're forcing the bishops off the board. Then this d pawn can try to become a pass pawn. Though
I like it.
White should have an easy time making sure that pawn's blockaded.
I don't know how Danny turned that around. It's very impressive.
Yeah, it looks just completely lost. And now it's like, wait, there's still life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So even taking a knight f6 is, one way to go. Probably not the best, but hey, everything's defended. And when you get closer to an endgame, especially when the queens are on, you stop viewing the d pawn like an isolated pawn. You start viewing it as a pass pawn.
Completely agreed. And look at that move. Good move by Lawrence, trying to trade queens so the king could then go to the d4 square, blockade the pawn. Of course, your king can't go and blockade a pawn when there are queens on the board. It's too dangerous. I like the way Lawrence is playing this now, though.
Yeah, he's really doing this well.
How do you even stop g5?
I think you got to go like for other, queen. I don't know what the move would be. You got to get some counterplay going, like queen c6 or.
So he goes queen d6, probably some knight e4 idea. Knight e4 now? Okay, knight d7.
Yeah.
But
4 seconds, and I think it's safe to say that Danny shouldn't be winning this game.
no.
So
Down,
he's just trying to survive.
So b3, knight c1. Typical plan to win back the pawn. So,
he's going to have to check back.
So
b3, knight c1. That's the idea.
How do you deal with that, actually?
Yeah, you might have to just go for the kingside pawns.
So play like f5 check or something and try to...
Yeah, see what he does. Because if king e5, I think king to h5 and g6 is too quick. So he has to go back. So I like starting with f5.
That's a really good point, because it looks like you're putting the pawn on loose squares, but as you're suggesting, the white king will just run in. And look at this. We're going to
I think he says, look, I'm up in the, I don't mind a draw going in the next portion, keep my lead. No point in like playing f5 maybe, and then going on to lose somehow to some outside a pawn. So I let's just say I understand from a gamesmanship perspective what Lawrence was up to there.
Yeah, he's just maintaining the lead. The worst thing you can do is lose that game when it's a 6-point gap, and Danny can try to win all his bullet games. But it is 7 points. Lawrence Trent out to a huge lead. We will have bullet remaining. Is there any chance for Danny? What do you think? Can he win 7 games in a row in bullet? Is there even time for that?
Well, yeah, I think the first question is there a chance for Danny mathematically? That's, I think, where you have to start, because if there is a chance for Danny mathematically, then you start about how credible it would be for that to actually happen. And in the bullet, I think if I was, having a match go this way, the number one thing I'd want to do is go play bullet. So this might be the only chance for Danny, but honestly, I don't think so. The way the match is going, I got to give full credit to Lawrence Trent for the way that he's played so far. He's played quick, he's played controlled. So unless we see just like some sort of horrendous version of Lawrence Trent in bullet, I think he's got this match, Robert.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I would say that, just to reiterate what you're saying, that even in the positions that were objectively bad for Lawrence, it wasn't a clear knockout for Danny. He started burning clock, and Lawrence started playing great defense to survive. So it's going to be uphill task. Doesn't come close to covering what it will have to be for Danny to win this. But we will take a quick break, and when we return, we'll come back for the bullet segment of this I'm Not a GM Speed Chess Championship. And as we return for the conclusion of this I Am Not GM Speech as Championship match, just want to give a shout out to Dr. Wolf, who provides very friendly personal coaching for those who have iOS. Download it for free. It's a great tool to help you improve on your chess. Personalized coaching is, generally speaking, a very beneficial thing. So definitely get on that. Use Dr. Wolf. And well, Mon, I think that Danny needs to turn into a wolf right now because he needs to win every single game, and there's not even room for a single draw.
No, that's the way it feels right now. I might have to get Danny on the Dr. Wolf app as well for some quick time pep talk. But it is drawing dead. He's drawing dead. He needs to win, as you said, every game. It feels like if he draws, loses, maybe it's mathematically possible, but he's going to have to be like mating Trent in like 20 moves in some games. So if we get these long drawn out games, opposite bishops, stuff like that, it's not going to favor Danny, who needs to be cognizant of the clock. As we mentioned, it's not about whether Danny can win 7 games. It's whether 7 games are actually going to fit into this time control, which is, as you said, only 25 minutes.
Yeah, one single 75 move game, and all of a sudden you're might be out of time. So Danny goes to D4. I was thinking he might do this, but he's done it a bit too late considering the score. But he got good positions against the French. It wasn't really the first move that did him in. And here we have a London system.
And I mean, the sad part is his position is already better. Okay, by the way, I love this position. His position is already better than like everything that I've seen this match.
Yeah, it's easy to play for white, and now look at him going super aggressive on the king side. I'm not sure it's justified just yet. Black can just park a pony on E4 and say, where's your attack coming from? But
yeah,
E5, wow.
I don't mind B5 from Lawrence. My concern for Danny is that the knight on E4 just like can't be removed. It's so annoying. Oh, takes a knight G5.
Yeah, I saw the eval bar go crazy too. Just knight takes F7, just
Still, again.
Although what he's doing seems perfectly good for white. Right now he's just saying, please take me on G5. I'll take with the F pawn. I'm going to crash through on the king side anyway. So, F6.
Just take on E6 like you don't care. I felt like that's what Danny was going to do. Where was this type of conviction in the other formats?
Yeah, he has just planted his knight on E6 and what's happening? Capture on E4, F5 is possible, but
I think he wanted knight C5, but he's hanging and not people not realize there's a knight hanging there.
Yeah, that knight could have been captured and should have been captured because now the knight runs away.
Queen B5 though,
and rook C or B3. Okay, maybe a bit more solid of an approach, but I like what Lawrence is doing. He's trying to strike on the queen side. And what does white do now? Rook H to E1. That has to be the move, right? Whoa.
Ooh, not a fan. Not a fan of that move.
But forks galore. And after knight C8, there's knight B6 coming.
Yeah, it's like they don't realize pieces are hanging. Take that guy on C8. It's so important.
Yeah, that rook's still hanging.
What? Queen A7 now, like he's getting mated.
Yeah, that turned pretty quickly. Queen B2, only move.
And then rook C6, rook A6.
Oh, gosh, that's painful. Okay. They're now focusing all their attention to the king side. There's a rook at H1 hanging too.
They play on one side of the board only. It's like, all right, we're going to the queen side, Lawrence. Couple moves here. Back to the other side.
Oh, didn't like that. Knight takes C8. No.
What?
Yeah, this is going to be a problem when the knight lands there. The knight is more valuable than a rook, so I would not be taking the rook on D1.
I would have played D5 there.
Oh. Wait,
okay, rook E7?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Rook's coming to E7.
I would have taken the rook on B2 because he's going to take B2 with check. No, he's not.
What is happening here?
Knight E5? Just, I can't even do it.
He does it, though.
Oh, no.
Rook takes B2 check and... Wait. What's happening?
Knight is on E5. He's going to mate him.
Is white winning this? Oh, it's winning.
Yes. Take it.
And then it's mate. Whoa.
What the hell?
What just happened? Oh, my gosh. What was that?
Guys, we need to see this Danny in every game from now on. Just every game. This Danny needs to show up.
Seriously, what was that? And Danny learned his lesson, by the way, because he didn't put his knight on E4 until either Lawrence moved his rook or he castled.
He looked at this. Yeah.
Yes, he clearly did. And And he played d5 rather than f5. So some changes in Danny's approach. F5 now makes sense just to protect the pawn on e4. And
Yeah,
I still can't get over that checkmate on f7.
that's hilarious. That is hilarious because he could have gone to f8 as well.
Right.
Like he chose to go in the corner and then it just presented itself. And this position for Danny can't complain.
No, certainly not. If you need a win, I mean, at least the c4 pawn's under attack. The bishop on f6 looks good. Even if white objectively is doing well here,
take on c3 maybe.
Take c3, queen e8 type of stuff. I like it.
Love that. Love that.
Oh, actually, can you just take on d5? Can you just win the pawn directly?
I think you could take on d5 and rook d1, then maybe queen e8, something like that.
And so now he's up a pawn, has the c4 square for his knight, but I like that d4 square for Lawrence's bishop. So
yeah. Now there's no queen e8, no queen d7. I think you almost got to go like f4 or queen g5.
Yeah, that makes sense. He takes on c5, but that's just going to be recaptured. And all right, he's trying to trade off pieces. He is up a pawn, so that makes sense.
Understandable. Now that looks like a strong move to me. That looks like a very annoying move to face.
So knight e5. I looked at the our live screen here, and the evaluation bar went down, so that meant knight e5 is probably winning.
Yeah, because the queen can't move from d8, so it would have to be a move like knight e5, but it wasn't played. This looks very good for white, I would say.
And
bishop d4,
bishop takes g7, rook e7.
Yeah, that's the tactic.
Didn't see it. So
knight b6.
Knight b6 probably is the move. But c5 also looks reasonable, and can't play rook b8. That's the problem. The knight needs to stay on
that's
d7.
annoying. Oh, I like this though. Ooh, hang on. I don't like this though.
Can't go to c7. It's close though.
I liked this though.
Okay, so going after f3. So king
maybe d4.
Oh, d4 is also going to become a possibility.
So knight d2 to e4.
Nice.
The bishop chills on d4 really nicely.
Yeah, and the a7 pawn's under attack. G7 now. h7 can be captured.
Yeah, rook d8. Rook. Nice.
This could be a mating net.
Yep. King to h5. Oh. Rook a8.
Oh, he could take on b6 and take on c3 as well. He could have captured that, but rook a8 is more principled, I would say. So king, no, don't make a draw.
I think he's going to, yeah, because king g6, rook check, king. Wait a minute, why didn't he do that?
He could have run his king to h file.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, that would have been better for sure.
The miscalculation that I had in my head was like, oh, if king h5, rook takes h7, but that would never be possible.
Yeah, and. All right, Danny going back to his d4 opening and has expanded the center. Lawrence is trying to undermine white center with pieces right now, hitting it on f3. If the knight moves from f6, the d4 pawn is going to be under attack, so knight can go f6 to d7 was a possibility. Instead, he goes like this, and, well, Aman, it seems like white has a very nice position at the opening.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that Lawrence is not going to be unhappy. Like sometimes you take these positions in bullet with black and they're just so quick and easy to play.
That's true. So you give up sort of the objective value in terms of like purely neutralizing the position for ease of play, and that way you can conserve your time.
Definitely.
Wow,
big dislike on that move.
Yeah, because now it's going to be good knight against questionable bishop.
Queen h4, queen f4. Yeah, keep the queens for sure.
Look at that knight on e5. Just can't kick that one out.
h4. Time for h4. Yeah.
He does it. h5, h6, queen f6. Look at Lawrence closing everything down, though.
Closing everything.
Yeah. You want to play a5, the queen comes to c5. So I'm going to take over the c file. Good luck to you.
I want to play queen f6 and if you do it now, you actually drop the g pawn, funny enough.
Good to note that the queen on b6 pins that pawn, so it goes king g2. Can you get g4 to happen? That's what white desperately needs to get in the
Wow. And Lawrence is doing the pragmatic thing. I think he's going to go like a5, king g7, queen f6, which is so annoying to play against.
And I think that white's objectively lost. Even
lost and objectively going to play like a 3-minute game here.
Yeah. And so I think Danny needs to somehow come up with an attack, but there's none to speak of.
None. Rook on e1 at least get the rook operating.
And look at this. He could have taken b3. He just puts his rook on queen on c7, keeping everything closed.
Bishop c2.
Okay.
Gotta be bishop c2.
Yeah, here comes queen c5. Knight g4 is now a threat.
No. Brutal. If he didn't see knight g4, he's gonna find it now.
Yeah. And there's almost queen e4 and c2, but I don't think.
Yeah.
Too fancy.
Too fancy.
Knight h2 checkmate.
Oh. That might be the dagger in this match with 16 minutes left. You got to feel that Danny needed that. After a draw and a loss consecutive, that's just not enough. And Danny's opening here is hot garbage, as they say.
Well, it looks like a French that Lawrence was playing throughout the match, and yeah, this is really bad. Even queen h5, taking over the king side. Can't recommend.
No, steer clear.
So there's going to be a sacrifice in e6 potentially available. Does it work?
I think so. Takes, queen e7, take, knight d5, bishop g5. Looked crushing.
Yeah.
But okay, Lawrence is not looking to take risks, I think, at this point.
But I like black's position now, because if you can just chisel at white center, you're probably just losing a pawn as white.
Yeah, he's very losing a pawn, but these often backfire. You just chuck things like f4 next after g5.
The bishop on g7 not being protected is huge. You're right. g5, f4, and can't take it without losing material.
Because white just, chucks that bishop out of the way, rook e1, and it's so easy to play this in bullet with white. I'm a big fan of what Lawrence is doing. He just didn't care one bit about that pawn on e5.
Yeah, you kind of trick your opponent in a way, because take on d4, take on e5 looked very nice, winning material, but actually the pressure and the buildup was good for black. So probably taking on d4 was a big mistake in hindsight.
Mm-hmm. Just bishop, I don't know, e2 or d3.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Knight c5 makes sense to me. Oh,
he's gonna take it, and he might even go queen. Yeah, I was gonna say queen c7, queen d6 stops castling. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so queen e7 mate is a threat. Bishop. Oh, wait.
Good move.
Queen I think 5. I would take on c6 and just
long castle.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, queen g7 is very pragmatic though. Okay, so black's up a pawn, right?
Yes, black is up one pawn here. He's got the bishop pair. I mean, definitely a fantastic position. He's solved everything from the opening. He's got 19 seconds, but I mean, in bullet, I think he's still got a lot of time, relatively speaking.
E5, winning a piece? Oh, it was knight h5. Okay, so that was a little tactic that Lawrence.
Yeah, he was going there anyway.
But somehow this doesn't feel very easy for black. I mean,
what's Danny's knight doing on b7, by the way?
It's hanging out.
I don't know. He really put it there on purpose. I don't know what it's doing.
Yeah, I got nothing. But now it's there. It's
there
on
it
D6.
is.
Very useful square. So
b3.
Yeah, b3 to take away the c4 square. That makes perfect sense. Instead, Lawrence is going on the h file, trying to win this h6 pawn.
Yep.
Okay.
That knight has taken a journey, by the way, and a pretty successful one. Knight e5, b3 for white. b3.
b3 looks completely reasonable. Knight e3. Okay, the g2 pawn is under attack.
g4. Oh,
that's
just take that.
No, that's bad.
This is a catastrophe.
The knight e3 is actually trapped. So.
And the knight on d4 is so strong.
Yeah, this is
GG.
That's a shame right there. Your knight is trapped on e3 still, even after all these trades.
That's insane, by the way. But yes.
Oh, and
rook a8, knight c6, all winning.
The knight was able to trade itself off, but even still, what black
rook takes f7, fancy.
That would be a great way to take advantage of a pre-move, right? Because expecting knight f7, so pre-move bishop takes, that would have been really close.
There's rook g1 there, but I feel like the pre-move is worth an attempt.
I think so. In terms of expected value from that position, I'm with you.
Poor Danny. This is going to be a loss because those rook endgames are the worst to play as well.
Yeah, because they take forever, right? Not only are you losing, but yeah, there's resignation.
Danny's going to throw in the towel on that one. And we actually see the ratings evening out in bullet. So whatever they started with, they're pretty much identical now.
And here we finally, at long last, have a scotch.
And is d takes c6, bishop d3 some pre-move stuff? Because is Danny getting mated here after bishop c5, bishop, queen h4?
Knight takes h2. I mean,
I just queen g3. Whoa, queen
g3.
Queen g3 was winning.
Queen g3 was winning on the spot.
Yeah.
Do you think? Yeah, maybe he went d takes c6, hoping for some kind of pre-move.
Because d6, you just trade the queens. Feels like you have just like a way better Berlin or something.
Yeah. So this is.
Is it Danny's turn for the attack? Knight e4, etc., etc.
Yeah, here it comes.
Careful of bishop h3, but I think queen f3 will be played.
Yeah, queen f3 looks good. And then f5 is coming. Because queen f... Oh, because the queen e1 check was...
Yeah, queen e1. It's a good move by Danny there.
Yes. Knight f6 check will pick up the bishop on f5 for the knight, but black can just start capturing. So not too scary. Yeah, this is a clean exchange up for black.
Yeah. Still, bishop d3, you can kind of plug the d file a bit.
Yeah, but now that the position is opening up even more, the rooks have the d file, the e file, and now the f file.
Yikes. Yeah, this is not going to cut it here for Mr. Rensch.
No, it certainly will not. And it's one of these situations, Aman, where there are 10 minutes left in the match, and you're just like, I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, I've lost.
Right.
Bishop coming to d6.
Okay, rook d7. Some semblance of counterplay. With bishop d6, as you said, rook e1 checkmate coming.
Yep.
Right next.
g3, g5.
Oh.
Yep.
That's a piece.
That's a piece. And Lawrence is higher rated in bullet. And honestly, what I thought was going to be one of the closest matches is extremely not one of the closest matches. It could be one of the biggest blowouts.
Yeah, just one of those days, right? Where if you started this match tomorrow and just said, okay, clean slate, it would very likely be much closer. Or it could even be a blowout in Danny's favor. So it's credit to Lawrence for sure. He's played a really energetic and strong match. I have been really surprised, pleasantly so, about his defensive tenacity. Like there were those positions where he ended up casting queenside and was in danger, but he was able to stave off the attack while creating attacks of his own. So the way he was able to obtain counterplay throughout this entire match has been really awesome to see.
Yeah, and that's just, he has to be a good defender, I think, with his style. When you play the sort of intuitive, quick moves, quick style of chess, you have to be a pretty good defender because you will miss things from time to time playing as quick as he is. Oh, queen c6 won the house there.
Yeah, it did. This wins a... Oh, I don't even know if you want to take that pawn b2 because d6, f6 would check. So you might have to take this knight on e4, but then the queen centralizes. So yeah, queen takes c6, missed opportunity there. Okay, check.
And a5 seems weird. King f1 or c3 even. He wants c6.
Queen d5, choose trade, take on d4, king d2, and isn't white kind of up a pawn because black's pawn is doubled on h file and white's pawn is a potential passer on the b file.
Yep.
The rook g6 was nice, right? Because you just say, if you're ever going to trade me, you're undoubling my pawns on that side of the board.
Yeah, I don't think he'll bite on that. Rook a3 by white, though, it looks like a great option.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
rook a3 looked almost winning.
It probably was. Rook a3 was really nice. Just full board awareness by Amon saying, the rook on g3, yeah, it's great. I'm fighting for an open file. But rook to b3, for instance. Rook g3 to b3. Or now rook g2 to a3. That could just...
Now he sees it. Now he sees it.
And there he goes.
There it is. And two connected pass pawns over there is going to be two connected pass pawns too many.
Yeah. And you're not even winning a pawn back for black. That's...
Oh, no. Now the king maybe goes and helps out these pawns.
Yeah, king f3, king g4 also comes to mind if you want to just steal this pawn h4.
Yeah, he needs to play rook h1. Danny is not.
Yeah, actually, rook h1 right now.
Rook h1, Danny. There you go.
Take it. Now you have a pass pawn. Oh, and now d4 is in trouble? Wait, how many pawns did he just give up?
Yeah, I still think white wins this, but we'll see.
h2? Oh.
Okay, rook. Ooh, hang on. f4. Need f4.
Okay, good move. Yeah. Now you're too slow. And the rook's gobbling all the pawns up. Take on h7. That's good. That's
tragic. Good. It's tragic.
Yeah. Even when
every game
he was coming back, just didn't work.
A story of most people's chess career. Oh, it looked good and then it didn't work.
Yeah. No, it's true. And here we have these pawns on b5 and a6, and it's actually a reasonable opening. At this stage, it looks not so bad for black, but you're giving up central control for some kind of pressure with your queenside pawns. But yeah, it's just
knight b4 ideas.
6 minutes plus. Yeah, even if it's a win for Danny in this game, far too little and far too late.
Definitely too little, too late here. And we've been talking about how, knight d4. Nice. I was gonna, as I was about to compliment Lawrence's, tactics and defensive skills, there he finds another one.
Taking advantage of the king and queen being on the same diagonal, and he's tried this, but I feel like when white stops that h3 threat, that if you, take a seat, that's really smart because I didn't like the look of that knight getting to e4 at some point.
Rook takes c3 with rook takes h3 ideas.
Oh gosh, this might happen. You take twice on b5 and rook takes h3 mate. I mean, he sees it now.
I think he sees it now. Yeah. Maybe queen c6.
Still hoping for bishop.
He wants it. He wants it bad.
Can white try f5 maybe and go for an attack of his own? Okay, bishop e4. Oh. Ooh. Look at that, queen f2. That was tricky.
Oh no, but the mate is. Oh, it's not mate.
Not mate because the queen blocks the diagonal.
Maybe takes and rook g3 next.
Oh, that's just.
Yeah, he does it.
You're a bully, Aman. It's a draw, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's a draw, but you get to make the other guy suffer. It's like, you got a queen and a rook. Who cares, buddy?
Yep. That rook. And rook f2, by the way, was the only draw. That's actually crazy because I thought you could move your rook anywhere, but then white plays rook f3 to give up the rook to give the space to the king along the first rank.
A cheeky draw.
Yeah, for real. And b3 now. Here come the b pawn movements for Lawrence.
Caught a little Danny smirk, half chuckle at the draw there. So, he's sort of admitted to himself that we've hit the end of the line here. The match is going to go to Lawrence, although it may have been mathematically clear a while ago. Feels like it just became evident to these guys.
Yep. And look at this, queen d5 wins on the spot for black, right?
Because on the spot.
Bishop
queen
g4
c3,
next.
bishop g4. Well, there's one for Danny. Robert, yay, we got one.
It does probably feel a little bit better to get a couple wins down the stretch because it seems like there will be time for at least one more game after this one, maybe two. And if you can cut into the gap, you feel at least like, okay, I didn't lose by 12 points, I lost by 7. It's not really much in terms of consolation, but all right, you'll take it.
Yeah, you don't want to be the biggest blowout of the event. So he's trying to give other people a chance to earn that title.
Indeed. And well, knight f5, queen e4 check, go for the mate.
Yep. Knight f5 is a good way to start, just stopping queen e3 as a resource to block.
Okay, the king's running to c1, survives.
Yeah. Yep. He lives. Queen e1 might be the only move.
Still down a piece, so even though you're not checkmating, should be sufficient here. Oh gosh.
Knight d4.
Yeah, the knight e2
into
check.
e2.
I like that. Oh.
Brutal position. Queen c1.
Just a5.
Yeah, time for a5.
Where's the checkmate? Some kind of sack on b3 coming right now. Take it. Yeah, you crashed through.
Nice. And that's maiden. Yeah. Oh, okay. You can sack the queen. True.
And now it's an extra queen. So I don't think we really need to commentate too much on the current position.
Hopefully we don't.
Yeah. 5 extra pawns and a queen for rook. That's.
I think Danny can handle this one.
Yep. No more tricks up Lawrence's sleeve in this one here. And that leaves us time for just one more game after it.
Yeah. Most likely one more game. Shouldn't be more. Some pre-moves there.
Yeah. And, well, cutting the deficit to 9. Lawrence.
And that'll be a win for Danny there. Let's see if he can get his 2,600 back and finish higher rated.
I was gonna say that, right? If he wins this game, he ends up with a higher bullet rating.
Yeah, that's about as much of a win as Danny can take from this match right here.
Yeah.
There's definitely some hanging stuff like take and take on h8. At this point, I don't think either guy knows or cares what they're doing.
No. They're just moving the pieces around, trying to have a good laugh.
Yeah.
And this looks terrible for black.
Knight h5, queen takes d5.
That knight is coming to f5 or h5. I'm not sure which is better, but both will be available.
Bishop takes g5.
Oof.
Just castle.
Yeah, bring the knight to d6. Knight e4 with tempo. Okay, we're at f5. Same idea. Agreed. Where's the
Maybe
check?
Danny can get a nice puzzle rush mate in here somewhere. Feels like it's close.
Well, that's a free piece.
That's a very free piece, and we might get another game.
Oh my gosh. One more. Queen e8 check. And then queen takes f7.
Yeah.
Then,
Well, I think he wants the match to end.
Yeah.
Don't blame him.
No, not even a little bit. Bishop f4 check.
13, 12, 11. It's the countdown.
Yeah.
Danny, he wants another game. Is he going to get it? 5 seconds? I think he's looking at the clock. He's like, I don't want any more of this. No?
This one doesn't count, right?
I don't think so.
F3. No. No.
Okay. The kings are coming out, boys.
Yeah, the
kings are coming out.
I guess they're allowing this to continue. And, well,
the worst part is if Lawrence wins, then he's higher rated than Danny.
It's not that bad for white right now.
It's looking pretty good.
Pawn's coming to g4, and then the knight gets to g3. Some attack for white on the king side.
It's the bong clad.
Yeah, now it looks pretty bad again.
There's no more fitting way to finish, Robert, this match than this opening right here.
How did we get from what should have been a tactical position to some kind of like strategic one now?
Yeah, now it's like 2 bishops versus the the double pawns and whatever.
Oh, that was good. Take
the
bishop h4 check coming. Oh, okay, de2 and bishop h4 just.
Please. Yeah. Even if you go de2 and just take the queen back, it also looks good.
Right.
Danny.
C4 doesn't look so bad either.
Oh, some missed chances.
Yeah,
this is not the vibe.
No. This is. Hey, good little in between move there with rook a to b8.
Yep, I like that. Bishop back to c3.
Okay, bishop c5 coming for black. Okay, plays bishop f8. I think bishop c5 would have stolen the b2 pawn with check.
Yeah, king e3, rook d2, bishop b4 here. Bishop b4.
Bishop b4 is really nice.
Yeah, now it's like king e3, and he's got this little formation. Although he has to watch g6, knight d6, takes rook e8.
Yep. So then I have to retreat somewhere to maybe g3, and then bishop. I'm still looking at bishop c5. I feel like trading the bishops is going to be good for black. The pawn on d3 is somehow untouchable.
Yeah, it's this weird position we got here. Rook c2.
Okay. So knight h1 to f2. Like it's the only. Oh, I don't like the knight there. Doesn't really help you. So what now?
Bishop e7. Yep. Just bishop d8, bishop a5.
Oh, that looks good too. There's some bishop e1 stuff as well.
Yeah, that's some weirdness.
Okay, so now you can get d4 in. That should help somehow. I don't really know exactly how it helps, but rook d4
Careful.
is knight f5.
And rook f4, knight d5.
Oh.
Oh, no. It's tragic. It's tragic for Danny.
Yeah.
No, the knight's just jumping everywhere. Lawrence basically has a position where the knight jumps are all he needs.
For sure.
Knight d8 or knight e8 to d6.
Too many knight jumps.
Hey, there's no good pick here.
There's no good discover check. That was like,
the pieces are perfectly
Take
placed.
the knight. Take on f6. Wow. You have a chance there. Uh-oh. That's mate on g7.
Uh-oh. That's very matey.
Yeah. Can't even go rook g1 because the bishop covers.
E5 doesn't even do anything.
It protects the g7 square, except for the fact that the knight's already there. Well, that's that, Aman. We see the match finally come to a close, and Lawrence Trent wins it by the score of 17.5, 8.5, and 9-point spread. I mean, what a match it was by Lawrence.
Yeah, we really got to take a moment and give the full credit to Lawrence here. We could say that, you know, some of it's on Danny for missing his chances, but I feel like Lawrence came in with a game plan. He started out really well, or should say at the very beginning he maybe was a little sluggish, but he really found his rhythm and he found the ways that he could take points off Danny, whether it was using the clock, getting up on time, taking him into positions where objectively he might have the worst evaluation, but he knows the ideas well enough to play it in blitz. So I thought he came in with a game plan. He executed it, but you have to put a little bit of that blame onto Danny for missing his chances. And most importantly, when things were looking tough and he got his one chance, he didn't even convert it.
Yep, I concur. And we are going to go to a break. And when we return, we will have both players for the post-match interview. So Lawrence and Danny will join me and Aman. So stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back with the post-match interviews. And we return with both players. Danny, our apologies, the match didn't go your way. And Lawrence, a big congratulations, because you were off to a bit of a tough start. At the first break, you were down 2-1. What did you change? What did you tell yourself that allowed you to go on a really big winning streak after that?
Nothing particularly. I was quite happy with how the French went, and I thought I'd keep on doing that. Obviously, my English experiment was exactly that. It was an experiment. So when I switched that up, I got a bit more stability with white. But I just thought as long as Danny isn't punishing me when he has white, then I'm going to have a very good chance in the match. And yeah, I think we both played pretty badly actually today, to be honest. I think in general, the level was quite poor. I just managed to, convert more positions, swindle in a couple of spots as well, which always makes quite the difference. And yeah, I guess I probably deserved the match overall, but I think the score flatters my my level of play. I don't think the margin was as wide as that. So obviously, commiserations to my boy Danny. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. I mean, you picked this French line, which you said just now before we were with these guys that you specifically prepared it for the match, and I had no idea what to do against it. And then I looked at the line briefly at the break, and even though I objectively knew like white was getting good positions, like from a practical perspective, you made a very good choice. And the fact that you like completely punished me with the French will go down in the list of the greatest embarrassments of my life. And so you were the better player today. You prepared and made a very good choice. And so don't sell yourself too short, man. I think you played really well.
Thank you. No, I mean, yeah, I don't even know how I came across this line. As many people know who follow me, I'm not a French player at all. And trying to find something, and you played this, this Scotch, and I don't. Really...
I wasn't even going to play the Scotch, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to play it, but it didn't matter. I mean, I admit that I did not put the level of preparation you did with an opening choice like that, which just, I mean, I feel like you won the match right there on a practical level. Because even though I started off on the right foot, I couldn't figure this out. And even when I was getting good positions, I wasn't comfortable. I was constant under time pressure. It was frustrating, honestly. And then about midway through the 3-minute, I was just really, really down with how I was playing. So, but you kept your foot on the gas, and then I was toast.
Well, yeah, I guess I just managed to convert, and I think as you said, Danny, you should have probably switched it up.
Yeah.
And then I think it would have been a bit more competitive, but.
Yeah, because in the end, Danny, you actually ended up trying just about every white opening in the book. And you had some E4 games, some D4 games, and it seemed like once you started switching it up, the positions got a little better. But you were stubborn with trying to beat down the French, and I think that was something that you didn't want to give up. Is that right? Like you felt like you had to beat the French rather than avoid it?
100%. I'm nothing if I'm not a man of faulty principles. And so when he was playing the French, I was like, Robert's never going to let me hear the end of this crap. I was like, I got to figure this out.
That's what I said on air.
I was like, screw Robert sitting there telling me that I can't beat the French. And damn it, he was right. So, that's what was going on in my head.
Yeah, we figured.
And I mean, Lawrence, on your end, right? You took a lead at 4-3, and you had just enough time left for a final game in that 5-minute portion. And then Danny ended up hanging a pawn with this bishop takes h7 check tactic. But I'm just curious, what made you switch your opening in that game? Was it the fact that you took a lead and wanted to play something more solid, or what was going through your mind?
I was playing this nonsense G4 English that some Norwegian guy tried a couple of times. Basically never trust that guy. He's a whack. And and then he played this bishop take. He didn't take on D2, and I was like, God, I haven't prepared that. What an idiot. And I was just getting really whack positions which suited Danny's style, and he was just beating me. And I just thought, you know what? I'm stubborn enough with my stock market positions. I think it's time to switch it up and cut the losers, as they say, cut the losers quick, let the winners. Yeah. So we had to give that garbage up, and then we'd switched to something which I also looked at, this Queen's Indian, and which is solid, and you get decentish positions, which I actually don't think suit Danny particularly. So I think that was probably the best decision I made in the match, was just binning that daft English very, very well.
Yeah. Well, it was tough. It was tough for me. I got to be honest. It was yeah, and it's one of those things where like I guess I shouldn't expect much better. Like I mean I'm not. It's like one of those things where you hold yourself to a standard of what you think you're capable of, and then all of a sudden you get hit over the head with, hey, you're not as good as you think you are. And matches like this just like humiliate you. So it was frustrating. I mean, I felt. And then I felt like I couldn't gather myself like mentally when it started to get away from me. Like that's just the honest truth. Like I couldn't. And like you said, I think I should have gone away from the French earlier, and probably it's a different match then. But
Yeah.
you know, you get all the credit, man. I mean, that was like, and I also think even in the time scrambles, you were just better. I mean, like I was nervous and I was getting under time pressure, and I couldn't quite find it today. So I mean, you know, that's kind of my. I know I'm answering questions before Robert and Amon asked me, but I just sitting here in my head, like, why did I suck so bad today? Like that's the only question like Robert and Amon should legitimately be asking me. Like, why did you suck so bad today? And I can't figure it out other than I give you credit that you really threw me off my game. So that's kind of the honest truth.
Well, you may have lacked some highlights today, Danny, but you had one good one. You had one smothered mate, knight f7 mate in an absolutely insane game.
I nearly fell off my chair there because
as soon as you allowed rook g7, king h8, and I played knight d6, like I perked up in my chair. I was like, I don't see how he's winning it right away. So, and maybe there was even a mate for you on the board. Like there probably was.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't even see knight f7 was made. I just thought you were making moves, and I was like, oh, do I take the queen? What do I do? You know, I didn't even see the mate, and I nearly fell off my chair. Luckily, already. I had such a margin. That's the sort of game, by the way, where if Greg Shahadi is watching,
oh gosh,
you know, that's the sort of game that Greg would win against me. He'd swindle me, but there would be like a 2-point gap, and then I would go on monkey tilt, and I would just blast off the next few games, and he would win. So that's how Greg does it. But I just got lucky. Shout out to Greg if you're watching, buddy. I just got lucky that I had such a big lead in points today.
Yeah. Well, Lawrence, as someone who has, you know, unfortunately, or I can say I've empathized when people make fun of you, like not beating Magnus up a rook and things like that. Like today, I wear the face of shame and failure, and today you are the victor. So I'm just glad to be like, you know, just the guy that just, I feel like I really hit the bottom of the barrel today. So, you know.
We all have our bad days. I mean, Derek Henry ran 40 yards today. So, I mean, what's he paid millions for if he can run during this broadcast? You tell me.
Yeah. Well, you know, I feel like the next time you and I throw down, we're definitely going to have banter, you know, because then at the very least, if I'm getting my ass kicked, which I think I can say, I'm a player today, so I don't have to worry about it. Then at the very least, I can get some good one-liners in there. So
that's true. I'm up for that, and obviously happy to win a match. It's been a long time since I've won a match. It's been a long time. It feels weird to win at anything.
Didn't you get out of the first round last year in this event?
Oh, maybe I won the.
Yeah, definitely did.
Did I?
No, you won the first.
I think I won the first, and then I played John Bartholomew in the second.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, thanks for making our life very easy, because Amon and I, we didn't really prepare questions, but you answered all the questions we should have asked. So.
Yeah.
Well, you're dealing with chess commentators. You know, Lawrence and I are chess commentators, not chess players. But
that's correct.
I said the only question you can legitimately ask me is like, Danny, why'd you suck so bad? And Lawrence, like, you know, what was your approach? And he obviously kind of explained it, and he crushed it. So, you know, anyway, man, I don't have much else to say unless you guys have more questions.
Well, it's very entertaining, Danny. Unfortunately, at your expense this match, but it was an enjoyable match, and I know it definitely wasn't much fun to sit there and take a bunch of L's today, but we had a good time commentating, and I think the people had a good time watching. So take solace in that.
Cool. Well, congrats, Lawrence. Lawrence, seriously, man. Good luck, man.
Thank you. I don't know who I'm playing next, but
yeah, I don't know either. On that side of the bracket, you'll play the winner of Alina Kalishninskaya and Lars Oscar Hau.
No, other side. He's the winner. Roberto.
Oh, you're playing Roberto Molina or Alessia Santaramo.
Okay,
dude. Yeah, I feel like you'd be the favorite in your next match. I don't want to jinx it, man, but I feel good about your
You
chances.
managed to jinx it quite well, but
Last year I lost to Teddy and he made it to the semis. This year he's going
yeah.
against the monster known as Carissa Yip. So
oh yeah, no, Teddy's
poor
Teddy's gonna have a tough. um,
Well,
that's it.
yeah. I
All
got
right,
nothing
guys.
more for you guys.
Now,
You guys
time to sweat the Bears.
exactly. Go enjoy your American football, Lawrence.
All right, guys. Thanks very much.
All right. See you too.
Yeah. See you guys.
Thanks again for a great match.
Congrats again, Lawrence.
All right. Well, we see that Lawrence moves on. He faces the winner of Roberto Molina and Alessia Santaramo. And for
Right.
Danny, well, his run has come to an end even before he could get into a gate here. So, well, we look across the bracket. Aman, this one's done, but we have another match in just a few days from now. I don't even know what to say. I feel like they said it all.
Yeah, like that's a great thing about having Danny on the broadcast. He just handles the interview questions and interview answers. And I feel like that was the easiest post-game interview I've ever had to do. But yeah, we do have the next match coming up, which I guess is Levy and James Canty, which we've mentioned earlier. But now that is the next thing to sort of preview. But yeah, this is for most people pretty one-sided match. So we'll basically see if Levy can do what his rating says he should do on paper.
Yeah, and these kind of matches, not always so clear cut. When you lose a game, you get frustrated, as Danny was talking about today. He just could never find his grasp of this match. And for Lawrence Trent, he did a great job, of course, in his ability to play an opening that Danny wasn't expecting and that didn't really feel like he had a good understanding in. And as you said, Aman, we started the show with this. That stubbornness was causing the players some very big difficulties.
Yeah, no, I almost feel bad calling it as accurately as I did because I don't like to see the matches wind up like that. But that did feel like kind of the story today, Robert. But yeah, a very decisive victory for Lawrence against Danny, and what we thought was going to be a very close match coming into it. Danny couldn't find his rhythm, and Lawrence was punishing game after game after game. So big congrats to Lawrence Trent on a victory, and he'll be moving on in the bracket. I am not a GM tournament.
For sure. And I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in for all these hours. Of course, we want to thank the players and the production crew who's really made this such a great show. Aman, I want to thank you. It's been a while since we've commentated together, and I'm definitely looking forward to more coverage of this event with you.
Yeah, no, I'll be back for as many of these matches in this event as I can. So definitely see some more of me. It's been a while, and pleasure commentating today with you, Robert.
For sure. And to everybody, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Sundays and tune back in for more chess content brought to you by Chess.com.